for that technical delay, which we've all become accustomed to at this point, I'm sure. So it is my great honor to call to order the Wednesday, November 4th meeting of the Freeport Planning Board. It is a few minutes after 6. We have a packed agenda tonight, so I will do my best not to waste any time. Item number 1 is the information exchange. And I think Caroline has an update on recent actions by the Project Review Board.
Sure. So at last month's meeting, the Project Review Board did approve a 6-lot subdivision out on Pownell Road for Hanscom Woods subdivision. They also did approve a site plan amendment and design review request from the Freeport Historical Society. They're going to be relocating an existing structure, making some exterior building modifications, and adding a new vault to their property on Main Street. And then they also had a residential request for a design review certificate and site plan amendment for a change of use at 74 Bow Street. And that's what they had going on this month.
Excellent. Next, we have a brief discussion on upcoming meeting topics. Caroline, you and I talked a little bit about this, but maybe you have some thoughts.
Well, you have 2 applications before you tonight. I think it will depend if either of those, what the status of those is, if they're ready to come back. We had some other projects that you guys have been working on. We talked about some kind of pre-pandemic. We talked about some solar ordinance amendments. We talked about some shoreland zoning changes, and we talked about some changes to public hearing notices. So those items are still all out there, and I think you'll see those reappear at some point. That's kind of our ongoing to-do list before you add some new projects in the mix. So that's a little update with what you still have in the loop for what you're working on pre-pandemic. Of course, unless something else is brought in as an applicant-driven item.
Next up, yeah, we'll look forward to, I think, wrapping up some of those loose ends as soon as we're able, given the current climate and technology. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes from the October 7th meeting. Anybody have any comments on those or ready to approve? I believe Robert was sort of in transit, so may have to sit out this vote. But other than that, I think everybody else was here.
Yeah, okay, I just make one note.
Please.
I was part of the meeting last month, just audio, but I did, halfway through the meeting, I lost connectivity, and so I didn't partake. But I just want to note that I did review all the material that was presented at the last meeting, and I did watch it online as well. So just I'm up to date.
Excellent. Do I hear a motion to approve the notes from,
So moved,
from the 7th? A second?
Second.
All in favor? Greg?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Anna? Wayne?
Aye.
And Robert? Do we want to get Robert? I guess Robert was there on audio, so yeah. Robert?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving right along to item number 3, we have a zoning ordinance and map amendment for the nature-based and art overlay district. The board will hold a public hearing tonight on proposed amendments to the Freeport zoning ordinance and the official zoning map of the town of Freeport pertaining to the creation of a new nature-based and art overlay district. This was formerly proposed as the Desert of Maine overlay district. Amendments to the following sections of the zoning ordinance will be discussed. Section 104 definitions, section 301 zoning districts, and a new proposed section 428 nature-based and art overlay district, section 514 off-street parking and loading, and section 515 noise regulation. The area of the new overlay district identified as tax assessor map 22 lot 8, otherwise known as 95 Desert Road, will be added to the official zoning map. And there's a gray area that is noted on the map on page 2 of this agenda, from which I'm reading. The applicants are the Desert of Maine Campground Incorporated and the Hestand Family Holding LLC, and they are represented by Perkins Thompson. So Caroline, I believe you have a quick update for us on this.
Yeah, so this is like you mentioned, this is the same item that you guys talked about, I believe, in June and September. The language looks a little bit different. The applicant did work with staff and the town attorney to make some changes to the language. Some of the changes you see here, obviously, it has a new name. You know, there is the potential that should somebody be interested in seeking an overlay in another part of town, that they could use this language elsewhere. So they gave it a new name. The definitions of campground, we talked about that before. The board had given the applicant some feedback. You'll see that they tweaked it. They put a square footage limitation on there, some timing limitations, and then they did add that they can't have cooking facilities if they add these structures. That was as a result of conversation with the board and also town staff. They did update the definition for nature-based commercial enterprise. They renamed it and just kind of added some clarity about some things that they want to do or how they would be limited. And I'll let the applicant or their attorney go into the details. From there down, you might notice that they cleaned up the intent. They actually did cut back the number of uses there. You know, they put some more thought into what they want to do, what could be accessory. And so the list of uses there has been shortened. Otherwise, there was some wordsmithing to provide consistency with the remainder of the zoning ordinance and how we do a lot of cross references. They did tweak the other standards. You know, we had heard some concerns about buffering and impacts to surrounding properties. So they do have some buffer language here requiring not only that properties or projects would have to meet the setbacks, but they would have to have a 15-foot buffer, which would be reviewed during the project review board process. And then they did add another standard under other regarding the capacity of the structures. They did increase the capacity. I think last time you talked about it, it was 200. They now show 300. I think they opted to give themselves some flexibility, but again, they can kind of go into that. And then they did add that the structure couldn't be used as a wedding venue. Other things we talked about before, they added the references for parking and the references for decibels. So the applicants here, if you guys have questions, but otherwise town staff and the attorney feel like the language is and where you need it to be with the input you provided to the applicant.
All right. At this point, I think it makes sense to hear from the applicant themselves before beginning the public hearing.
Great. Well, first I wanted to thank the town staff who's been working with us for well over a year now, and the planning board, and thank all of you who are attending the meeting tonight. I know everyone has busy schedules, and we appreciate that you showed up to do your civic duty, and we really appreciate the opportunity to have our proposal considered. So just to introduce ourselves, we're Doug and Mila Hestand. We live on Dune Drive. How do we come to buy the desert? Well, believe it or not, a little over 2 years ago, we were reading the Boston Globe and found out it was for sale. And many impulsive decisions later, we became the latest in a long line of owners of the Desert of Maine. Initially, our decision to buy the desert came from a desire to preserve the land from development. And we were also moved to save the historic barn that was filled with literal trash. So we had a vision of restoring the barn and filling it instead with music. Like many in Freeport, we were only aware of the desert's recent past, and it was not a place we would recommend to friends or family when they were visiting us. But as we started to dig into the history, what we found was just this incredible history. So we learned about the geological history, that Maine was covered by a glacier so heavy that it pushed us below sea level and left Freeport under the ocean. And shortly after we emerged, the sand that makes up the desert started blowing around and settled here. We learned about the Tuttle family who farmed here at the desert in the 1800s, and how their questionable farming methods created what was essentially Maine's little dust bowl. And after that, the land became unfarmable and was known as the sand farm. And it was this community gathering place where families and friends would come together and enjoy themselves until 1926, when it was purchased by a very resourceful Mainer named Henry Goldrup, and he turned the he turned the desert into a tourist attraction. And now for nearly 100 years, the desert has been a tourist attraction with many fascinating and quirky characters that we've learned about. And for much of that time, it was a charming and really beloved destination. It was a place where people could experience nature and enjoy time with friends and family.
Yeah, and really the more we learned about the history, the more we wanted to preserve this place. I just feels like now more than ever, we need to inspire people, particularly children, to be stewards of the land. So that was a big motivation for us. We feel as parents that we need things to do that with our kids that don't involve screens. And we want to preserve places that make Freeport unique and that connect us with Freeport's past. And I think a big part of it is, related to COVID. I mean, let's face it, retail is really struggling, and we think we need businesses in Freeport that attract visitors that are diversified from brick and mortar retail. And after all we've been through in 2020, it's just, for us, it just feels like we need a place where we can come together and be inspired and healed by the work of local artists. And so that's why we're here. The zoning changes we're proposing, well, first of all, the Desert of Maine has been a commercial entity for long before the new neighborhood grew up around it, and long before it was zoned in the 1970s as a campground. Our proposal we think would more accurately define our longstanding and continuous uses. It would, as Caroline mentioned, add some uses related to the barn, allowing us to host small, intimate concerts of acoustic and classical music, and finally modernize the campground definition to allow us to build eco-friendly A-frame cabins. These changes that you're considering tonight would give us the ability to make the significant investments that we think are required to make the Desert of Maine a true asset for Freeport. That's our goal. And we want it to be a place that Freeport residents wouldn't hesitate to recommend to friends and family. So Jim, I don't know, or Brandon, I don't know if you want to dive in more deeply to the actual zoning language.
Just briefly, I know you have a long agenda this evening. Brandon Mays with Perkins Thompson. Thank you for your time, Chair Kapala and members of the board. In front of you is what we think is a better, improved version of the overlay district. Caroline did a very good job of summarizing the process. We've worked heavily with Caroline and the town's attorney in updating this language, and adopted almost nearly all of the changes suggested from staff and the town attorney. As Caroline mentioned, this overlay doesn't just apply to the Desert of Maine. It's been drafted in a way that if there was another property that had a similar natural feature of some sort in Freeport, they could potentially adopt this. Just wanted to highlight a few things. It's consistent with the comp plan on a variety of levels, between economic development, the environment, preserving environmental features, and enhancing the arts. And as you've noticed in your packet, the public comment is overwhelmingly in support of this project. Just a few highlighting that Caroline mentioned. The 300 person is by no means set in stone. It is giving us some flexibility for us to be able to figure out when we do go to site plan what the building can hold and safely do. We think it's probably a lot lower than that, probably the 250, but we wanted to be able to have that flexibility. So we did put a limit. We did limit it to no wedding venues, as was one of the concerns from, I think, neighbors as well as the board. And really the art center is going to be occasional. not every night by any means. So not a huge amount of use there. But we're really here hoping for a positive recommendation to the town council this evening so that we can move forward with the next steps of the overlay and getting the Desert of Maine up and running, bigger, better, and more modern. So with that, we are happy to answer any of the specific questions that you see in this updated draft.
Before we open the public hearing, do we have any questions, specific questions from the board?
I just have a quick question. I don't recall the discussion about weddings. You know, obviously I have no problem with it, but I'm just wondering what's the genesis of the prohibition on weddings?
It was, I think, one of the concerns, and Doug and Amelia, you can also supplement some of the concerns of the neighbors with a lot of dance parties. It's not the intent of, well, we want to be able to have events, civic events, I think fundraisers, music. The intent really isn't to have loud, catered dance parties, weddings. So that was in response, I believe, to some of the neighbor abutting concerns, and we're happy to include that.
Yeah, it would just seem to me, it would seem to me those characteristics could apply to anything, you know, other than weddings as well as weddings. So it seems a little bit odd to me that that's a specific carve out, but you know, as I said, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I think with a wedding, it always ends in a party. And when we are very conscious of the fact that we have close neighbors, and they're very concerned about preserving the character of their neighborhood. So it was an easy one to carve out, and I just the events that we would hold, we can control the time, we can control when they end, and we can control the types of organizations we let use the barn. And we're going to be very conscious about not having parties, and we just couldn't do that with a wedding, and felt like future owners of the desert, you know, may want to. It isn't always about us. It's also about what happens to this property if we no longer own it. And so we just felt that protection was important for the neighborhood.
Fine with you, it's fine with us. Just one other very quick question. Are any of you aware of any other places in Freeport that would qualify for this type of overlay?
The Desert of Maine is a very unique piece of property.
Right, but there was some discussion of making the language such that it could be applicable to another place. So I'm just wondering if anybody had any examples of potential overlays of this nature.
Do you want me to clarify that, Sam?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think if I know. I mean, there's some cool streams and rock formations in the woods in Freeport, but you know, I think yeah, I certainly agree that the desert is a unique spot.
So it's not likely we'll see other applications under this particular overlay configuration?
Seems unlikely to me personally, okay. But yeah.
That was my question. Thanks.
Yeah, Caroline, do you have thoughts on that?
No, I just want to say you can't just wake up and decide you want to overlay district. So I do just want to be clear. If somebody felt that their property or properties could qualify or this could be applicable, they would have to come before you for zoning map amendment to get the overlay district designation on their property. You know, I'm not sure, nothing jumps out. You know, the desert's definitely a unique situation, but there might be other people that have properties that have things that we don't know about them, and they might feel like this is something they could take advantage of or come forward in the future. But again, it would have to come before you through its own zoning map amendment process.
Right. The process would be essentially identical. It's just that the language is there already. But otherwise, the process would be the same. I did have a question about the 300-person limit. I'm curious about and this is probably a procedural question for you, Caroline, the parking and traffic requirements as that limit, you know, goes up and down. Is that something that the project review board would review at the time that the project is approved?
Yeah, so definitely if this were to go through, their next step, they would have to go to the council. They would have to go to the council and go through the council's process for zoning ordinance amendment. They would then need to make application to the project review board for some sort of site plan amendment and come back through that process. As part of that process, they would go through site plan review under section 602 of the ordinance, and there is a standard for parking. How they have it written here is that the parking requirement would be based upon an analysis submitted by the applicant. So they would need to demonstrate all the uses on the site and what they feel the parking requirements are. My guess is that depending if what they bring forward, they would probably do some kind of traffic study or traffic analysis, and based upon the outcomes of that could trigger different levels of review. So sorry for the long answer, but yes, ultimately they would look at that when they come through site plan review.
And I guess my other thought is on Wayne's point about the wedding prohibition. Seems like a tough thing to enforce, and I just guess I would throw out, if anybody feels like maybe like a curfew might be a more enforceable sort of quantitative way of limiting that restriction. But you know, I'm also not wedded to it, so to speak.
No pun intended. Well, I would say
It's hard on Zoom, you know, you get no reaction from these things.
My point of view
I
would
think,
be,
I think at this point, I just want to put that out there. I think at this point, it probably makes sense to hear from the public. Before we open the public hearing, though, I did want to note that we received a lot of public comment on this. We very much appreciate those of you who took the time to write in support or with questions or you know, whatever the comment was. We really appreciate it. We had a chance, I think, to look through those comments, and you know, we have made note of them. So in the public hearing, we certainly welcome more public comment. That is the idea, and it is also perfectly acceptable to note your agreement on the public record with somebody else who has already spoken, in the interest of all of our time tonight. So again, thank you to all of you who have showed up, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from you. Do I hear a motion to open the public hearing?
so moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, Robert?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And Wayne?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, which officially opens the public hearing. At this point, members of the public who wish to comment, please raise your virtual hands, and our host of the meeting tonight, who is the esteemed manager of Freeport Maine, Peter Joseph, will allow you into the meeting.
Got all that right, Mr. Chair, except for the esteemed part. So I'm gonna, usually what I do is I'll read the next three people, or the person who's coming over, and then two people who are on deck. Is that fine with you? And so people can be sure where they're queued up. So I've got Sarah is the first in line, then I've got Dave and Amy will be next. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Sarah is on. If you turn your mic on, Sarah, we can hear you.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Mila, Doug, Caroline, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and for hearing my input. I have enjoyed my time in Freeport very much and continue to enjoy being neighbors with Mila and Doug. I'm speaking as an abutting neighbor. I live with my husband, Ryan, and our 2 children who are in the RSU at 89 Desert Road. And I'll keep this brief because we have a long agenda, but I wanted to share that since Mila and Doug have taken stewardship of the Desert of Maine, our experience as abutting neighbors has been so dramatically improved. They're dream neighbors. They're welcoming, warm. They communicate well, clearly. They're receptive to feedback, and their ideas, their inspired vision for this property sound pretty dreamy to me, especially compared with the long list of ways the property could be used. And, you know, I have experienced the sound and environmental pollution of the RVs that used to come to the desert and the campfires of all of the campsites in use, blowing smoke into our yard, the noise, and the way that Mila and Doug have envisioned the use of this property is much more palatable to our family as abutting neighbors. So we need revitalization in Freeport. We need nature and science-based and art and music and inspirational entities to exist here so that our families and our community have ways to engage with each other, now during the pandemic safely. And moving forward, we need spaces where our children and our adolescents are free to be exactly as they are and to be welcomed and supported in a safe and nurturing environment that is wholesome and friendly and welcoming. And that is exactly what we have experienced from Mila and Doug from the moment that we met them shortly after they became the caretakers of the desert of Maine. So I'm very strongly, along with my husband, Ryan Meter, and our children, in favor of paving the way for Mila and Doug to proceed with their inspired vision. And I hope that the board will consider that this is potentially going to fill a need that is unmet in our community. And I'm really excited for the possibility, selfishly, to be able to walk down the road to, for example, a Portland Symphony Orchestra acoustic ensemble. But I think that more importantly, this will contribute to the aggregate good of our town and our community for many years to come. And so I hope that it will be approved and allowed to proceed. And so thank you, everybody, for hearing me and for showing up.
Thank you,
And with
Sarah.
that,
I don't remember the names of the people on deck, but
I've got Dave coming over next, and then Amy and Jennifer next up. Hey, Dave, you're live. If you can turn your mic on, please.
All right, good evening. My name is Dave Clucci and I live at 92 Desert Road. The property at 92 Desert Road shares a boundary with the Desert of Maine on the north side of the desert. I know Doug and Mila, and I've watched as they've transformed a rundown campground and a low-end tourist attraction into an innovative, educational-focused, kid-friendly resource for the neighborhood and the larger community. I visited the desert with my grandchildren many times since Doug and Mila began this transformation, and I've marveled at how the visits to the desert have captured their imaginations and entertained them. I've learned from the many laminated posters positioned around the desert, fascinating bits of information about our neighborhood and about the geology of the desert. I've also attended small musical concerts in the Tuttle Barn and very much enjoyed them. I understand there are details to be worked out around traffic, parking, and the size of events to be held on the property, but I am enthusiastically supportive of Doug and Mila's vision for the Desert of Maine and delighted to have a Center for Education and the Arts as my neighbor. Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Dave. I believe we have Amy next.
Yep, so Amy, then Jennifer, then Lydia. So here's Amy. If you can turn your mic on, you're live.
I think I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
You're good. Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you. I'm Amy Novak. We are new to Freeport as of just a little over a year ago. We are neighbors of Doug and Mila over on Dune Drive. And we have just been enormously pleased with what's been happening at the Desert of Maine. I won't go super long into details, but I do have a lot of experience of bringing art into the communities and what a wonderful benefit it can do to enrich all of our lives. And we just love having that open space, the uniqueness, the history. Our children have used it, both teenagers and young ones. And I know there's been talk about working with community programs to do some great things for kids over there, obviously challenged during COVID. But in light of COVID, I would hate to see any open space be reduced, and having this unique place for our town is just wonderful. To me, it's similar to being able to take a walk at Pettingill Farm, right? Having that unique space, or the uniqueness at Wolfsnack or Winslow, like having the Desert of Maine offer this to our community is just wonderful. And I just wanted to say we are in full support. So thank you.
Okay, so next we've got Jennifer, and then on deck, Lydia and John. Hi, Jennifer, you can turn your mic on and you're good to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I am also a neighbor. I live at 32 Dune Drive, and I'm tuning in for my support for Doug and Mila. They have been nothing but great neighbors to all of us. They have kept us completely in the loop. They're communicative. They're just wonderful, wonderful neighbors that keep us informed. They're very passionate about what they're doing, and that is one of the reasons that I'm so supportive of them and what they're proposing. I am a lifelong Freeporter. I grew up in Freeport, and I came back to Freeport to raise my children. I have 3 children in the school system, all of whom have been down to the desert in the last few months. And it's just a wonderful thing for our town to have, particularly at this point in time when we need places like this, and we need the arts, we need culture, and we need to bring our town together as a community. And this is the perfect way to do that. So I am, and my husband as well, in full support of Doug and Mila and what they're proposing. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Lydia next, and then John and Mia on deck. Hi, Lydia. You can turn your mic on and you can speak.
Hi, sorry about that. My husband just came home and the barking dogs. I was trying to wait to unmute myself until they stopped barking. You might still hear them a little bit in the background. Are you able to hear me, everybody?
Yes.
All right, terrific. Well, I would first like to thank all of you for all of the work that you do for the town of Freeport. And this is really super tough for me because I am probably the one person who is not on the list of completely convinced that this is a positive thing. I will say up front that my husband and I, Ben Dobson, live at 93 Desert Road. We are the largest abutter to the Desert of Maine. Our entire property from end to end does abut the Desert of Maine at some point. And I agree with absolutely everything that Sarah said. Sarah is my direct neighbor. David lives across the street from us. I agree with everything that they said about Doug and Mila personally, about what they've done to this and for this property, what they've done to kind of just make this a really wonderful place to be. I do still, however, have quite a few concerns. And I will tell you also that Doug and Mila came over and sat on our porch. We had a long conversation on Sunday. And both my husband and I feel tremendously better having had that neighbor to neighbor conversation. I do recognize that a lot of these things will have to be managed at the point that we get to the site plan stuff. I'm not sure if I'm saying that properly or not, but there is a big concern about traffic down this road. It is a dead end road. And, you know, with the amount of spaces that are being proposed in the barn, you know, there's concern about having, you know, even if it's 50 cars, you know, come down the road at 6 o'clock at night, and then all 50 of them start up and leave at 10 o'clock at night, whatever it is. We have absolutely no concern with the sound related to the concerts in the barn itself. Really, it's all that ancillary noise and traffic that will come along with it from getting to the venue and then coming out of the venue. As you probably all know, when you leave a concert at night, everybody's talking and you know, we have this summer redone our porch. We call it our COVID labor of love. And the thought of not being able to kind of sit out quietly on a Saturday night, enjoying the nature that we have surrounding us currently because of all of that noise. It's just concerning. As I mentioned earlier, Mila and Doug have been terrific, and they have listened to our concerns, and they have assuaged many of our concerns. You'll notice that really the only thing that I'm bringing up tonight is the noise factor and the traffic factor. I did have concerns in the past about building the structures in the campground, because as I stand at my window right now, I can see the lights of the bathhouse in the campground. There are 4 or 5, I'm not exactly sure how many, of the campsites that directly abut our property. But again, in speaking to Doug and Mila personally on that neighbor to neighbor level, I feel much more comfortable about what their plans are, and that they would be open to our concerns about where those structures are built and how many, and the size of them, and those types of things. So really, I think that I have in the past put all of my concerns in writing. And I wanted tonight to put a voice to those concerns, just so that you guys have it. I am resigned. My husband and I are kind of resigned that this will pass, and we're really okay with that. But we just want to make sure that the rest of the concerns aren't lost, especially because some of the wording currently does still seem a little bit, in my layperson's terms, loosey-goosey in relationship to how somebody after the he stands leave could then interpret that language and what they could do with it. So, you know, in the section that talks about nature-based commercial enterprises, where it talks about it may include but not be limited to, or is not limited to, you know, are there other things that could transpire from that? You know, even the mini golf that is listed in there is a concern to me, again, because of the noise that would come from that. Sarah did mention the noise and the smoke from the campground, from the trailers, the RVs that had been there previously. I will tell you that we've been here for 10 years, as Sarah pretty much has been as well. And the desert really did get kind of sleepy. And it was in disrepair, and it wasn't the best place. But part of that was a plus for my husband and I, because there wasn't a lot of traffic going through the campground. And so now that I've lost my train of thought completely, I'll come back around just to say that you know, mini golf and a daily noise of mini golf. I do work out of my home. I have for the past 14 years, so it's not something new. It's not something COVID related. I do work out of my home. My company is based out of Florida. And I do have my windows open all summer long. And, you know, that is a concern for me. So I just wanted to thank you for letting me have a voice, being probably the one negative voice in all of the things that you're hearing tonight. I really appreciate it. Again, my husband and I are okay with this moving forward, as long as the open dialogue continues, and as the largest abutter, things really are taken into consideration. Actually, there is one more thing I wanted to mention, and I do apologize for running on and on. I was hoping maybe that the language could be addressed in the section that refers to the buffer. It does not, it kind of leaves it open, at least in my opinion at this point, related to I'm trying to find it in the wording. It says that if these natural features do not exist or are insufficient to provide an adequate buffer. And I would ask that maybe it be considered that no matter what, that a buffer actually is put into the language to be built. I think that would make us more comfortable with both the noise and the sound from all of the ventures that are being talked about at this point. So if that's something that could be considered, that an actual buffer does need to be built, that would, and just to clarify, I'm not talking about a wall, I'm not talking about a fence, but something natural like a berm with trees or shrubberies or something that would absorb the sound, that would potentially prevent the light from the cars and things like that coming from the parking lot. So, all right, with that, I will be quiet and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Lydia. Next we have John, and then Mia and Lauren are on deck after John. Go ahead, John. If you want to turn your mic on, you can go ahead.
All right, there. Am I on?
You are, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is John Albright. I'm not an abutter. I live in South Freeport. And I've submitted a letter to Caroline, and she's, I think, provided it to you all. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I just wanted to be here to punctuate that. Thank you for the time that you spend. I'm very impressed with the volunteer effort that goes on in Freeport, and this is a hard job. I did want to just draw a note to the one thing in my comments. What Doug and Mila are proposing is, in fact, indeed consistent with the comprehensive plan, but it's also consistent with the language within the FEDC's Vision 2025. So there's sort of a double, not a double whammy, but a double duty. I think there are like 5 or 6 references in the Vision 2025 document that specifically would be addressed in a positive way by what Doug and Mila are proposing to do. So with that, I just draw attention to my written comments and say that I would encourage the planning board to take note of one sure bright spot in Freeport's arts and cultural and historical and economic future, and also take advantage of the care and commitment that Doug and Mila have shown to their land and to the town of Freeport, and approve this application for rezoning post haste. So thank you very much for your time and service.
Thank you, John. Okay, next up, Mia, and then Lauren and Stuart are on deck after Mia.
Hi, this is Mia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm Mia Dyson. I live at 22 Merrill Road, which is just off the Desert Road. And I have a question, but I think more it's just an encouragement to expand the vision of what you are creating, which sounds like a really wonderful resource for Freeport. Statistics show universally that Black colored immigrants, people of color, have much lower rates of participation in outdoor venues, parks, and other opportunities to experience nature and science in the natural environment. And we have Lewiston, which is not terribly far from Freeport, with a very large immigrant community, many, many children who live in the inner city there, Portland as well. And I wonder if there could develop some kind of vision for making this facility available to field trips, public school groups coming from outside of Freeport in a way that would not overwhelm the facility, but provide an opportunity for environmental education for children and adults and families who historically have not had access to those kind of venues.
Yeah, I can address that. I am absolutely interested in doing that, and am actively networking with organizations that are already doing that. They're side by side in Portland, and that's a big goal of mine, to provide this space for nature deprived kids. So thank you for that.
Great, thanks so much for addressing the issue.
Okay, thank you, Mia. We've got Lauren and Stuart with hands raised. Just 2 people left. So if anybody has wants to speak on this public hearing, make sure to put your hand up. The next 2 speakers.
Hi, this is John Manganello, not Lauren. You can hear me all right?
Hi, John, we can, yes.
Hey, all right. So thanks for the opportunity for a quick comment. As I said, my name is John Manganello. I am a neighbor of Mila and Doug. I live on Dune Drive. My wife is Lauren Manganello. She had submitted written comment, and I've been married long enough to know that it's always a good idea to go on the record to agree with your wife. So I want to do that. So all of her positive comments about what Doug and Mila seek today, I am in full support, and also the over 25 other positive letters that we enjoyed reading from other supporters. Doug and Mila are a gift to Freeport. My stepfather was someone who always loved the term of art of it's a no-brainer. This is as close as the town of Freeport can get to a no-brainer as you could possibly imagine. A lot of people have visions. Doug and Mila not only have a vision, but they have a plan, and they're putting their support, their financial resources behind it. This is, as I said, an absolute no-brainer. The other thing I think of, and I appreciated hearing some sort of counter arguments for this, and I imagine what could have the other option been, and I think about that as a neighbor to the desert, and the other option was a failing tourist attraction being sold to a potential home developer, or someone potentially seeking other kinds of zoning change to go from rural residential to a higher density multifamily type unit, and comments, and I can appreciate this idea that there could be lights at night and cars and whatnot. But the other alternative was a future failed tourist attraction or major development. Then you're looking at numbers that was not only once in a while when an event were to occur, but daily, morning and night. And so, as I said, this is not only a no-brainer, but Mila, Doug, and the vision they have for the desert of Maine is an absolute gift for the town of Freeport. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John. I've got Stuart, Liz, and Joyce. So Stuart's coming over right now. You can go ahead, Stuart, when you're ready. I've got you showing your mic is on. Uh-oh. We may have a problem if he's trying to talk and not hearing. Caroline, how do you guys usually deal with if somebody has a technical issue? Do they email you or call back in on a phone, or what?
We haven't had that issue, but if Stuart wants to email me at cpelletier@freeportmaine.com, I would be happy to share his comments.
I'm not sure if you're on and you're hearing us, but it looks like you're here, your hand's up, but your mic is not coming through. You can also call into the phone number on the top of the agenda that's on the town's website, freeportmaine.com. And you can use a touch tone phone, and is it pound or *6 to get the hand up, I think, on the touch tone phone?
I think it's *9 from my past experience.
*9, thank you for that. All right, I'll leave him on for a minute to see if he can get the mic working, but next is Lauren. And then Liz and Joyce in position 2 and 3. Hi, Lauren.
Hey, this is John again. I could keep going if you want me to, but I don't think you do. I'm going to mute myself.
Sorry, your hand. I didn't even register your hand. I left your hand up, didn't I? I'm sorry about that. All right. I've got Liz and Joyce. Liz is coming over to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Liz. Hi, thanks.
Hi, so I am a neighbor, and I have the desert of Maine. I live at 130 Dune Drive, and I just want to say I'm so grateful that Doug and Mila bought the desert, and that they're making improvements. It's been a fantastic transformation. It's beautiful, and I think there need to be more green places that people in Freeport and people visiting Freeport can come and visit. It's good for people's health. It's good for tourism. And I mean, I'm so happy that they bought it. And I hope that you will, support their efforts to continue improving it. That's all.
Thanks, Liz. All right, I've got Joyce coming over. Hi, Joyce.
Good evening. I live down on the Flying Point, and my family's been in this town multi-generational, and it's wonderful to know that somebody has purchased the desert and will bring it back and surpass its past glory. But I do question the not allowing weddings. I think that weddings, one, bring in business for a lot of other businesses in town besides just your own, like caterers and flowers. And we don't have a whole lot of places in Freeport proper to be a wedding venue. I think that with a contract, with the wedding party, you could limit the size, you could limit the time, you could have just afternoon weddings, you can limit the type of music, how long the music, how loud the music is. But I think you are cutting off a revenue stream there that could be very lucrative. That's all. Good luck.
All right, thank you, Joyce. Mr. Chair, that's all the people with hands up at this time. Absent Stuart, I don't know if we get any communication from Stuart, if Caroline did or not.
All right, in the absence of, looks like we have one final hand from
You
Jane.
do, okay, Jane. Hi, Jane, you're on.
Am I unmuted?
We can hear you, yep, you're good.
Okay, I'm on my phone, so I don't normally use Zoom on my phone. I live on the Merrill Road, just down the street from the Desert Road, and I'm just amazed also at what Mila and Doug have done to the desert. And I had a question. I thought I heard they said no cooking. Is that for the A-frames, or what's that about?
It's just
Brandon, maybe, is that, or Doug Miller?
Doug, if you want to.
I think the intent is to make sure that these don't turn into little condominiums that people live in. So we, want to make sure it was a way of making sure it wasn't technically a dwelling unit, which would include, bathrooms and cooking facilities, basically a little house. So we just want it, if you're going to eat it, if you're going to camp, like there's not going to be an oven and a stovetop, and you're not going to stay for very long.
But they could cook on their open fire pit, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. I was just thinking that sounded odd, but all right. Thank you. And I fully support what you guys have been doing, and you are great neighbors.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks,
All right. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
I was going to tell you that's all I've got for hands, Mr. Chair, so go ahead.
I guess I'm looking over in the question and answer pane here, and there's a comment that I just wanted to make sure got onto the public record from Chris, which says, this seems very selfish points and really has nothing to do with the betterment of the community. So Chris, thank you for typing that comment. It is a little hard, at least for me personally, to put that into context without further comment from you. I'm not sure I identify with that comment personally. I certainly see a lot of ways in which it could, this proposal as put forward could serve the betterment of Freeport, and we've heard a lot of people who think it can. So I would certainly, Chris, if you're still here, encourage you to put your hand up and expound upon that. It looks like Keith McBride's hand also just went up. So Keith,
Got him.
And under the wire.
Hello, Mr. Keith. You are on.
Good evening, Keith McBride, Director of FEDC. I submitted a letter in support of this, so I won't read that to you. But I do want to say there's a lot of thanks due to Doug and Mila for coming to this very open-minded to say how do we make this work, and also to town staff. Caroline, Nick Adams was involved, Peter, and a handful of other folks who also came to this, recognizing that there's some real public benefit to, as Joyce put it, returning the desert to its former glory, or exceeding its former glory, and that there's really something special in the town for having that happen. For our part, FEDC sees this as an opportunity to further one of our goals, which is to sort of diversify the experience for people coming to Freeport. But I think even beyond that, there's a real opportunity for residents to see something special come out of this that they can take advantage of as well. So this truly can become one of the crown jewels of Freeport, and I think this is a great effort to help Doug and Mila get that accomplished. So it's taken a lot of effort by a lot of folks. So thank you everyone for your effort on that, including this board. And I just encourage the planning board to send it to the council with a recommendation that it ought to pass. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Looks like the hands keep trickling in. We have Deb.
Go ahead, Deb, you're live.
Hi, I'm trying to unmute and hopefully you can hear me.
You're good.
We can hear you. Yep.
Thank you. My name's Deb Smith. I live around the on Lower Flying Point. I've lived here, I don't know, 3 decades plus, something like that. And I will say that Wolf Neck Farm used to do weddings and no longer do. And as a neighbor, I can say that I'm really glad. And I can see why eliminating that as a use would be the preferred way to go for all the neighbors. I think that's a wise limitation to not have the weddings. They turn into something completely different than having a concert, especially the nature of what is being planned and what is being proposed, and sounds very, very nice. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Deb.
All right. I think for the members of the public listening, you have until we get through the second on the following motion to get your hands up. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So move, Sam.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, Robert?
Aye.
Excellent. Greg?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And Wayne?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So with that, the public hearing is officially closed. Would any members of the board like to comment on anything that we just heard, or any other thoughts that you have on this proposal?
Sam, I'd just like to say I think the language, this latest edition, looks great, and I'd be willing to read a motion when the rest of the board is ready.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page, personally speaking. I think it was helpful to hear from Deb about the wedding. I think that is I could see a few different ways to do that, but it's a pretty clean cut way to get at the spirit of limiting noise issues late at night and give the neighbors some protection. So I'm in favor of leaving that in there. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that issue were to be raised, let's say the applicants change their mind about that, is there a procedural way for them to get that restriction reconsidered?
Yeah, they'd have to come back for a text amendment.
Because my only concern is that governmental entities shouldn't be doing things that are arbitrary. You could have a party exactly like a wedding without somebody getting married, and then the prohibition would no longer apply. So it it seems rather arbitrary just to prohibit weddings and no other parties with certain characteristics. So I have a small concern. I'm not going to, make an issue of it here, but it's good to know the applicants could change their mind and seek a change to that if they want to.
Yeah. Brandon, do you have a thought on the legality, I guess, of that, or maybe Peter could weigh in on that? I guess personally, I see it as sort of a, yeah, I mean, I guess there are different ways to put a similar, get at the spirit of that regulation without prohibiting weddings, like a noise curfew or noise limits or something like that. But I do think it's, a pretty efficient way to do it. Peter?
Yeah, Wayne's point is good. Weddings are, I'll add some color from kind of the comments that we've had at the council level about noise through the short-term rental ordinance process. That's kind of an open process that a few people here have been involved in, and in the audience as well with the town council and the ordinance committee. We hear complaints about weddings, or like one of the big ones for events when people do like rental houses and things like that. So it is something that's generating complaints in the community for sure. There are other times that complaints are generated to get at Wayne's point, corporate events, parties, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, things like that are kind of, I guess those are tied into the wedding industry, but they're different. They're not, they wouldn't be covered under the wording now. Those are kind of the four things that we've heard, of the three things, if you count bachelor and bachelorette, it's the same, that we've heard the complaints about through that process. So weddings is a big one, but there are others. So Wayne's got a good point.
And I do just want to, I guess, add, this was to address some of the concerns, a specific concern. We are still under the underlying RR1 noise ordinance as well, which is the most stringent in the town. So I don't think there's any intention of having bachelor or bachelorette parties. Weddings was something that was specifically called out to us. We were happy to work with the neighbors that were concerned specifically about that use. I think if there were a need to amend, we could come back for an amendment, but we're happy to leave the restriction in as is.
Yeah, I think it certainly offers some protection to the neighbors under this use. And I guess I just, looking forward to whatever the next use is down the road, if somebody decided they wanted to be I don't know, I guess it's always hard to gauge the likelihood of these events in the real world, but somebody wants to make it a bachelor party destination. I mean, I wonder if there is a different way. I do think Wayne's point is is a valid one. Is there another wording or another like gatherings over 200 people after 10 o'clock at night or something?
Tim, can I clarify for you here?
Yep.
Weddings is something that, the town staff, the applicant, and the attorney talked about, really for the reasons that, Peter mentioned. We do get complaints when there have been weddings in places, whether they are or not permitted, traffic, noise. We also get a lot of calls for people that want to have weddings in barns. So when we worked through this with the applicant, we've had some enforcement issues with weddings, as there were some concerns for the impacts on abutting properties. So although I think Wayne's right, there could be a lot of other events that we aren't missing. That seemed to be the most common one that we have enforcement issues with, and that we get complaints about. So we did talk about it and put some thought into it, and we can't cover it, but this was agreeable to everyone. So staff would definitely, support that based upon other enforcement issues we've had in other places.
Yeah, I think that's good enough for me, certainly. And I guess I could see also an avenue in the future if there were issues related to other types of events that a noise ordinance covering the rural residential district could, that could be amended in some other way to get at that. So just a reminder that the process here is that assuming that the board does find this to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, it then goes to the council, where there will be another public comment period. And also just a reminder to the board, for whomever gets the lucky responsibility of reading the motion, that the key part of the motion is that this proposal is found to be in harmony with the 2011 comprehensive plan for the town of Freeport. So with that, does anybody want to take a stab at the motion or ask questions about the motion, or does anybody have further comments?
I'll take a stab at reading, Sam. Be it ordered that the Freeport Planning Board recommend that the Freeport Town Council adopt a proposed amendment to the Town of Freeport zoning map into sections 104, 301, new section 428, section 514, and section 515 of the Town of Freeport zoning ordinance pertaining to the establishment of a new nature-based and art overlay district, in that the board finds that the proposal is consistent with the 2011 Town of Freeport comprehensive plan, in that it protects natural and historic resources, it encourages the expansion of the creative arts, and it promotes Freeport as a destination to visitors.
That's one we've heard in a while. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor? Robert?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Thanks to Doug and Mila for sticking with this process. I think, it seems like I speak for the vast majority of the town in saying that we're excited to see what you guys put together. I know there are still many steps in the process, so we wish you the best of luck with all of those as well. Great, thanks to all the members of the public who commented on this. We really appreciate you being here. And without further ado, I would like to move on to agenda item number 4 this evening. If I can find my agenda, which is right here. So agenda item number 4 is continued discussion of the Desert Road and Old County Road zoning change. This is a continued discussion on a request to change the Industrial 2 district to allow for a mix of commercial and residential uses, and to possibly also change a portion of the rural residential 1 district near Old County Road to allow for higher density single family and multiple family dwellings. Subject properties include Tax Assessor Map 22, Lot 25, and Tax Assessor Map 26, Lot 38. The applicant is KV Enterprises LLC. The current landowner is LL Bean, and we have representatives from Sebago Technics here. Before we hear from Sebago Technics and KV Enterprises, I would like to take a moment to remind everybody again about the process and what we're doing here tonight. Tonight is a continued discussion about a possible and requested future application. This is not an application that we are reviewing tonight. This is sort of an informal discussion. There is a possibility for the board to take public comment tonight. It is not required by law, but it is a possibility. If the board is amenable, we may take public comment. I know there are a lot of people who are eager to weigh in on this proposal, or this potential proposal, I should say. But no matter what happens tonight, the board will not take action. And before the board does take action, if the board takes action to recommend this to the council, there will be a public hearing like the one that we just heard from Doug and Mila. So there will be additional opportunities for the public to comment. And also, even after any potential future proposal does make it through the planning board, there is an additional public comment stage at the town council before any changes actually go through. So we have received a lot of public comment on this already, and we do appreciate that. I think we have well over at this point, well over 100 pages of written comments on this potential proposal already. First, I'd like to invite the potential applicant to speak with updates on their potential proposal. And I would like to then have an informal discussion with the board, at which point we'll ask if the board is interested in hearing public comment and come up with some ground rules for, or sort of guidelines for the public comment period, or potential public comment period tonight. So I just wanted to put that out there for now. And with that, I'd like to invite Sebago Technics and KV Enterprises to fill us in on their proposal or potential proposal.
Oh, sorry, can you hear us okay?
We can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. We're grateful for your time tonight. I wanted to start first by acknowledging our arrival here tonight, as well as the communities, and probably yours as well. It's probably filled with a mix of anxiety, fear, concern, and maybe even possibly a little bit of hopefulness. And so I wanted to start with that, as we acknowledge that there are some concerns, and we recognize the unfortunate way that the information has been shared with the community, or how it's been circulated and represented. It's not our intention. Certainly, we'd like to bring context to that discussion, and also to identify, and we're grateful for you pointing out the process, that we are so early in the stage of a discussion that our intention has been to come and seek feedback. And I think the silver lining in this is that we are grateful that the community is engaged and that they are here to provide comment, and that they are available to open this dialogue with us. And so recognizing that, and also my experience over the last 15 years with the community of Freeport has always been one of inclusivity, of open-mindedness, of curiosity. And so we're eager to engage in that curiosity and that discussion with the community. So we just asked the community that they allow us this opportunity to share the context and the discussion and the process that lies ahead for us. It's a very long process, and we hope that they will join us in it. So for everyone here tonight that would like to provide comment, but has also provided feedback already, we've read everything. We will certainly continue to hear questions and concerns. But really importantly, we agree with you. Responsible development should not impact infrastructure, systems, or services. We absolutely agree, and that's not what we're proposing. Responsible master plan development that is supported by zoning and is regulated through state and local government is the direction of responsible development. And so through that, we hope to provide the analysis, the solutions, and the implementation that bring improvements to burdens that you're already facing, but also bring amenities for the community. And so with that as our introduction, I'd like to share our presentation. We are disabled from screen sharing right now. If we could have that ability, we'd be grateful for it. There we go. But just quickly, to give everyone an idea of where we are in this process as we see it, there is obviously a very long pathway ahead of us, and we are at a very informal point where we've asked the planning board to provide us some informal feedback and comment. When we met last, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was just simply too much information too quickly, and what we asked was that we leave you that time to ruminate with the discussion, and that we come back to re-engage and then be able to have a little bit more informed conversation. During that time, certainly, again, we're disappointed in the unfortunate way that some of this has been communicated, and we're hopeful that we can set some of that clear tonight and have that dialogue. So as we see it, this is a very long process, again, with the informal feasibility, proof of concept, and really starting to engage with the community to the point that we can then bring some informal language or language for you to consider, for the community to provide feedback and direction, for the staff and the planning board to provide comment and direction, and for us to move forward through the process after that. So to give everyone just a context of the area that we're talking about, what we're proposing is a transition zone location that's located along Route 295 between Desert Road and the Old County Road extension. This is a parcel of land that does encompass an area of wooded lot, as well as the golf course. So to give you an idea of context of how this fits into the comprehensive plan through the transition zone discussion, You can actually see our site here noted in red. It actually touches one of the blue bubbles, and it is pointed out in the comprehensive plan that the areas of delineation, the circles as it was not a formal delineation. It wasn't specifying parcels or the specific area, but really guiding towards areas where this might be relevant. And we think that this is one of those areas.
Kylie, can I stop you for one moment here? I'm not sure that we are seeing the presentation that so we just have, or at least I just have the cover slide that says Desert Road Transitional Area Workshop 2.
Oh, goodness.
No, Sam, you're right. We're seeing the PowerPoint, the whole outlay. It wasn't, you might have hit F5, but it didn't have the presentation up. It just showed your slides down the side with your cover slide.
I'm so grateful for it. Let's go back and I'll regroup. Thank you for the catch. Can you see it changing now?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Well, I apologize.
Process timeline here is what's up right now.
Wonderful. So just to quickly go back, and I know you've already heard this from me, but this is where we see ourselves in this very long process. So we're projecting somewhere between 17 and 22 months, really to go through a public feedback session, engaging with the community, a process with you as the planning board, a process with the town council, and then moving on into a process with the project review board. This is a very intense process, we understand, and we're hoping that you and the community will join us through it. And then again, just identifying this transition zone location. You can see it outlined in the blue here, hopefully, with the Desert Road at the top of the area, Route 295 bounding it on one side, and Old County Road extension connecting to it. You can also see that it is bound on another side by land owned by L.L. Bean, as well as the railroad. So this is one of those great areas that it is constrained by physical barriers, and it does create that great buffer area. So again, coming back to the transitional area, the area of the comprehensive plan, and revisiting my point that within the comprehensive plan, it was very clear that there were no defined parcels and that the circles weren't meant to show the only areas, but to really provide guidance that these might be good transitional areas. And as you can see, our site does touch one of those blue, recommended areas to consider a transition zone. And we really do feel that this is one of the best locations for it. So as we kind of zoom into that, showing you the context of the transition zone. You can see the golf course, you can see the C1, C3, C4, the industrial zone, as well as the rural residential, but really importantly, supporting the idea of a medium density zone. You can see that the C4, which currently has a density of 12 units per acre, as well as the approved RCOD overlay district, which has an approved overlay of 9 units per acre. This would be a great area to fit in a medium density that sits between the two, that creates a buffer between the C1, the industrial, and the rural residential. Excuse me, truly with that railroad creating a physical restraint between them. So really a perfect buffer area. And understanding that the communities, Freeport in general, experienced a growth rate in the last 9 years of 8.6%, and that the comprehensive plan does ask that that growth rate be supported in a high density or a medium density or transition zone. We really feel like a development like this will support that 60% goal in a responsible and managed way. And so as we dig into it a little bit more, just showing you that density and how it is distributed, 12 units per acre to the right off of Desert Road, 9 units per acre off of Old County Road. We would be proposing something along the line of 7 units per acre. And again, that is with the removal of any land that was used for commercial development, the removal of wetlands, removal of any right-of-way. So there's a lot that's taken out of that that still leaves a lot of land for open space, for amenities and benefit creation. So as we get to this area, you can just see that pointed out. You can see how the golf course might really support some great development potential. You can see how we can still provide some really great amenities within the site. And again, you can see that bounding of the land. So the land owned as recognized as Fog Farm by L.O. Bean. Again, a small strip of land abutting the railroad corridor, also owned by L.O. Bean. You can see a small piece of land to the left that is largely undeveloped and is actually separated from the street there by a river itself, and then the 9 units per acre to the left in the overlay district. So I want to present this plan because this is one that has been circulated, but it's been circulated as though this development would show up overnight. And this is a really important piece of the discussion because the development of this nature really takes 15 to 20 years to develop. And this is that representation of density managed over a time period of nearly 2 decades. And so to understand how that might play out, this is, again, not a proposal. This is not a design. This is simply an illustration to communicate how density might be applied and how phasing might be applied. And so you can see that the phases are rather small and they move through a number of years. So as you can see here, this one represents 16 separate phases. Understanding that within your own town process, the limit of an approval is that 2-year period. So there's a number of iterations this plan will come back for to make sure that it's being developed in a managed way so that each phase is going through a planning process. This is responsible development, but unfortunately we have to show this in a large context plan to show the master plan potential of a zoning request that we're asking for. And it is unfortunate that this has been circulated in a way that almost asks people to respond to a great unknown. So as part of this process, one of the mechanisms that we'd like to incorporate into the design is a complete streets initiative. This is an important process that Freeport has undergone. A development like this allows for a lot of opportunity to create alternative circulation, sidewalks, bike lanes, vehicular travel lanes, amenities that you don't see in other areas and other developments in Freeport. And because you're working with something that is master planned and that is bound by new language, you can build in these amenities and these opportunities for the community. The development is also supported by opportunities for alternative multimodal transportation, including the breeze. So as we've been talking about it, one of the major goals is to include public transportation, bike lanes and infrastructure and pedestrian connections, not just within the site, but around the site. And this is a really important piece because this is part of our DOT permit that would be required. As part of that, there's a significant analysis that's going to take place. And that analysis, and we do have one of our traffic engineers on the line tonight. And what I'd like to show you is the study area that we would be using for this. There's a 2-mile radius from each entrance point that we'll be studying with great intensity. And we did have a meeting with DOT last week that the staff, city manager or town manager, town planner, town engineer, and public safety, as well as representatives from the Maine DOT were all present for. And the whole intention of the meeting was to define the scope of the study and analysis. Some important things that came out of that were the improvements and studies that are already underway to improve the Desert Road interchange, and that DOT is working with your town engineer and staff to start formulating that design, and we'll be moving through that process soon. In addition to that, it's letting them know about the potential for density and development so that they can fold that into their calculations and design, but to also start to identify what are the other areas that we might not know about that would be important for the community. And as part of that, for example, it was brought up by town staff that while there are counts that are offered during certain times of the year, one count that might be really valuable is to count the traffic during the non-seasonal peak. So in other words, the holiday season where the LL Bean Fulfillment Center is running at full operation in support of their holiday season. And so we have authorized additional counts so that we can provide that study and that information, and we can fold it in to our offsite improvement plan, as well as the permitting that goes with it. And this is, again, a little bit ahead of where we would normally be, but we really feel like these answers, not the speculation of the potential, but the actual answers are critical to the community. And at this time, I'd just like to ask Derek if he might offer some insights on the study that we're going to engage into.
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I think you covered it pretty good, but essentially what we're doing is going through what is referred to as the Maine DOT traffic movement permit process, and that will include a very comprehensive study focusing on areas potentially within 2 miles of the site to determine what the impacts of the development are and the best way to provide mitigation for new impacts that would come about. So that will be a process that will be undertaken over the next multiple months, and as part of that, we'll be gathering traffic data as appropriate to form the base of that study. And like Kylie mentioned, the main focus, obviously, that's a big topic of discussion, is the exit 20 improvements. So we want to make sure we're coordinating with DOT in the town to not only understand what's proposed today for that, but to make sure that the resultant traffic from this development would indeed be able to be handled by those improvements, whatever they end up being in their final iteration.
Thank you, Derek. So we're wrapping up to the end of our presentation, but I wanted to use this moment just to really kind of focus on, we understand the call for responsible development. It's part of the reason we're here to talk to you tonight. And I would put forward that the town of Freeport has experienced 8.6% growth in the last 9 years, and without even recognizing the decades of growth that came before it. So growth is going to happen in the town of Freeport. And then I think in that time, because you have not had maybe a master plan development of this size, development's occurred, and it's occurred in a way that I would almost describe as unmanageable, simply because it's been small enough that it hasn't tripped any major thresholds. And so in a cumulative nature, this development has created impacts and burdens and stresses on systems that can't be alleviated through smaller developments. A larger development with a phased, managed approach has a way to address the stresses on the system, has a way to improve infrastructure, services, and amenities while creating revenue for the community that provides benefit not just for the new residents, but for all the residents. We really believe that this is in line with your comprehensive plan, that this is the goal set forth by that comprehensive plan, and that a development like this can really be used to leverage the improvements that are needed in a community where you're already experiencing stresses on infrastructure and services. And so part of that analysis that we'll be doing will be to expose those areas and to find ways that we can provide solutions. So in kind of discussing that, I wanted to just offer that over the next 45 days, 45 to 60 days, we envision that we'd like to continue with our next steps. We'd like to engage with the community, starting with a public meeting and listening session on November 18th. And we'd like to actually ask that we reach out to some of the community members. There's obviously a really well-organized community opportunity here. So we'd like to, if we want to go to the next one, we'd like to send that information out via advertisement, but we're really hopeful that we can contact people through their email addresses, but also ask the Freeport residents for responsible development if they could use their channels to bring people to the site to meet with us and to bring people to our listening session to engage with us. This feedback is critical to us. It's not a position of trying to sway opinion. We understand opinions are all of ours, and we hope that we can provide insights, context, and information so that we can continue to feed that curiosity that I've come to find really important in the community of Freeport. And so after that, what we'd like to do is come back to the planning board after meeting with the neighbors, after completing some additional studies on these impacts, and also start to provide you with some preliminary zoning language that you can provide direction, feedback, modifications, and adjustments as you see fit. And with that, I'd like to really just return it back to the board. We're grateful for being here. We understand that you offer a lot of your time, and we're thankful that you're using it to talk to us tonight.
All right, thank you to the team at KV Enterprises and Sebago Technics. I guess I'd like to turn it over to the board for a minute to get sort of first reactions here, and I think I'm understanding this correctly, that what you at KV Enterprises and Sebago Technics are hoping to take away from tonight is some guidance from the board about the sort of approach that might be most appropriate in our view, of course, for a potential or for a future proposal to come before the board for zoning language. So
absolutely, we're not looking for a decision, just the conversation and feedback.
Right.
That
Yes.
would be wonderful.
And it's not, I think the board is aware, it's not up to us to write language or do the legwork there, but I think our opinions on the direction and the feasibility of this sort of development, that's what we're here to provide. So I think just a couple of minutes of thoughts from the board would be great, and then at that point, what time is it here? It's 7:30, and I think if it's amenable to the board, there may be an opportunity to open it up to some public comment. So we'll keep that in mind as well. Thoughts? Reactions?
I'll just, I understand that, the unit of comparison, 7 units per acre, is within what we've been seeing in the area. But the aggregate of the project is quite considerable. What I'm wondering is, I know we talked about, they talked about the phased project. What's the driver of these phases? They envision, I know they say it'll take 15, 20 years, but if there's considerable demand for these, will they just outlay one phase after another, or just 3 phases at one time? How would that work?
I'm sorry, would you like me to respond right now or wait? I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I think we'll take a few minutes to have you guys answer some specific questions.
Sure. So the reasons for the phases is actually identified as part of our fiscal analysis for the fiscal impact. It's really focused on maintaining, development on trend with your growth. So right now, if you're trending at 8.6 and that starts to, the projection would be that that's going to grow to about 12%. Those phases are in line with that 12%. And that's really why we show it built out in that way, so that it is not projecting more development ahead of demand. And I guess twofold, that's not simply just based on a study, but I think it's very easy to understand that it doesn't do anyone any good to build a lot of stock and to leave it sitting vacant. And so that also just helps gauge out what to expect from a development standpoint for the developer, so that they're not over projecting what they might need for demand.
When you run that projection, are you assuming that all of the development in town is happening on your parcel? Or would that, because I mean, just practically speaking, it seems to be that there would be development in other parts of town that would happen concurrently.
Right, I think it's reasonable to assume that you're going to have other development in other areas of the town. We did focus largely on what this development meant in terms of a percentage representation, understanding that the comprehensive plan was asking for 60% of that to be focused. I mean, certainly our hope would be that a managed approach would be that this represented that growth. Largely your growth in Freeport was represented by single developments or smaller subdivisions in aggregate. And what we would hope is that because the demand is being met by a managed approach, that would create a greater offset. It would not eliminate a single residential family home being built on the outskirts or in a field or in a wooded lot or on the coast.
Other reactions from the board?
Well, I have just a practical question. If this is to be a slow phase development that could last as long as 20 years, you would have to start by sizing your facilities to meet the demand for all 500 plus units, correct? I mean, you'd have to have water, sewer, traffic changes, all projected to meet the demand after 20 years of development to get to that 500 plus additional residences. So is that what you would do? You would put in that size facilities to begin with?
So you are correct. Largely, to pull it back to the plan, if you think about that, in this case, in the illustration we're showing, the main spine that comes through it, that would essentially be the main infrastructure extension, which is the most expensive infrastructure component of it. I think I would build it this way. So yes, those areas would have to be extended to support phases on either end until they had the ability to connect through and then create the full connected system to meet the other phases. In terms of the traffic permitting and analysis, yes, you want to scope the entire thing out as though that density arrived and so you could manage it in the offsite improvements, but those offsite improvements might be phased to meet the phases of development. So for example, the DOT permit would only be good for 5 years and it would then have to go back and be revisited. So there's multiple points of engagement with local and state regulation to help manage that sizing and that development. So to answer it more, yes, you're gonna build lots of it up front to support the future development, and then there are areas that will fold in through the phases.
And I guess I'll just ask a more general question. If the sheer size of this was the chief concern of the residents of Freeport or the members of the board, what is your flexibility in terms of scaling this back?
I think it's part of the discussion, honestly. I think what we're representing right now, the 529 units, is really an expression of what the developable land is at 7 units per acre. It's not starting with 529 and then figuring out where that calculation goes. So I think there's a discussion component that needs to happen, and that's what we're asking for. There is a limit, and you can imagine that for the infrastructure we're talking about and for the level of improvement, the cost and the burden that bears does require a certain amount of development to ensure that that can be carried by the project.
I guess, you know, I certainly hear the need for a transition zone being consistent with the comprehensive plan. That to me makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I guess I'm sort of broadly supportive of the idea of a transition zone in town. I certainly, you know, we got some public comment that seemed to be in favor of promoting affordable housing and housing at different densities and, you know, sustainable development, sustainable from a, you know, high performance building, like energy efficient building, and sort of environmental sustainability perspective. I think it makes sense to support these kinds of developments in town. I think the part of it that gives me the biggest pause is the rezoning of the rural district. I feel like Freeport has a rural character outside of, you know, that's one of the things I love best about living in Freeport is that the rural character of the town is intact. We have the downtown. I happen to live downtown in a relatively dense part of town, but I can get out of the dense part of town in a matter of moments. And so to me, the rural residential parts and the zones are, I think sacred is maybe too strong a word, but I think, you know, they are very important to the character of the town. And I would take rezoning a rural residential district, really no matter what the size of the rezone, you know, the rezoned portion is, I would take that very, very seriously. And it gives me quite a bit of pause to consider rezoning rural residential.
Does it help to have it in context of the use surrounding it, that potentially this is a map adjustment because this small piece of rural residential being bound by the physical constraints that it is, but also the ability to connect to other rural residential land has already been cut off. I mean, with the overlay, with the railroad, with the land that is landlocked, that it cannot be reached for rural residential development, it seems that this small piece of land is really ideally cited to almost have this adjustment because it does not connect really to other areas of the rural residential zone. And it does provide a very unique buffer that you don't really see elsewhere in the community.
I mean, I think it's certainly on the spectrum of, you know, rural residential areas in town that we could potentially rezone. You know, if we we could theoretically rezone any part of town, I guess, we being the residents of Freeport, you know, through a process. But I take your point, certainly that this has advantages. But I also think that there's a big part of it, you know, it's sort of a gateway to town too on 295. And I thought about this because I drive that part of 295, you know, at least once a day in each direction. And the fact that there's such a buffer on the right side of town, or on the right, the east side of 295 on the Route 1 side. And then there's the big, you know, the open space of the golf course. And there's not, you know, you don't see a lot of housing, you don't see a lot of development. I think that sort of sets some of the tone, at least for me, for driving into Freeport. It feels rural, and that, you know, I don't know, to me, that matters. I think having a lot of houses clustered right up there would really change something about the way that the town feels, even just driving in and out of it. That's, you know, that's part of my personal feeling there. Other thoughts from the board?
One of the common themes in the comments we read was that we don't need to lose that kind of rural zoned area. What we need is redevelopment in the village area, and especially with the diminished retail activity. As an applicant, is KV at all interested in considering any other location for this development or this type of development?
That's a very interesting question. To my knowledge, I don't think that the land is available for them to purchase for redevelopment, I guess. The reason this parcel is being considered is simply because of its availability, because of its location, and the potential for the development really within this buffer zone. You pose a very interesting question. I guess I'm simply just not aware of the land for development. I would imagine they would also be interested in development in the downtown area if it presented itself. But I don't know that I am aware of the same availability. And so I apologize. I don't have a great answer for you.
No, that's fine, but maybe what you're saying is it's a good topic for future discussion.
Right. I think it's a great future discussion. I don't know. I would like to not have that impact the potential of the zone overlay discussion, but I do think it's a very interesting and valid conversation topic for certain.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be high on people's list of thoughts about this potential proposal, is that we have this downtown where there is a high vacancy rate right now. And, you know, if we're trying to support development in town, are there ways that we could support it in the village? And I'm sure one of the responses to that from the development side will likely be, well, if we have more people in town, then that can support more development in the downtown. I certainly, we can see that argument. So I guess, you know, in a perfect world, yeah, to me, if we want to add a lot of housing units to town and we want to do it in a sustainable way and we want to have sustainable growth, it would happen closer to town and it wouldn't require taking a large tract of undeveloped land and putting new stuff on it. To me, but I recognize certainly that this is the land that's available for this sort of thing. And yeah, how does the board feel about taking public comment? We have 127 attendees. We have 3 hands raised at this point. Would it be helpful, do you think, for the board to hear public comment at this point in the process, or do we feel like we might be better served to hear public comment once there is an official proposal in front of us?
Well, I would certainly be in favor of allowing people to speak, at least for some limited period of time, if people want to speak today. The thing I'd be interested in hearing about is the extent to which this explanation of it being a slowly phased project, that's going to last 20 years before they get to the big numbers everybody's been kind of freaked out about. To what extent does that ameliorate people's concerns about this? So I'd like to hear from people whether that changes their view, or they're just as vehemently opposed to this proposal, regardless of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I would be very interested too in hearing people's thoughts on what part of the objection that we've heard in the written comments so far, what part of it is related to that sheer size, and what part of it, if there are parts of the proposal that people find to be attractive, but maybe they still oppose the overall because of the potential character change to the town that most of us enjoy living in. So I think if we do take public comment, my proposal would be to limit the comment to I don't know, Peter, can we say 90 seconds per person, a minute and a half, and I would encourage those people who have not written in, maybe to we have a lot of hands already, and maybe that order is already set. But I would very much like to hear from people who have not had the chance to write in first. And I would also like to note that it is very, very acceptable to add your support to a previous commenter and get it on the record, without repeating necessarily every word. And again, we do appreciate all of the public comment that we've gotten this far. And I think, we've had a chance to read through a lot of it, and that says a lot, and we appreciate the participation. Are there any objections to hearing public comment from the board? All right, so Peter, are you okay with 90 seconds?
Yeah, that's your discretion, Mr. Chair, and the board's discretion. I can set a timer for anything you'd like. Recognize people. Would you like me to say when you've gotten to the minute and a half, and then you can leave it?
We could do it.
It could be you folks who cut people off. That's not really my authority. They can go on.
Yeah, I guess we don't have any impending doom music to play over you or anything. So I just ask that people respect the suggested time limit, and we'll try not to bring out the mute button.
Can I ask a question, Sam?
Of course.
I'm assuming that the potential applicant here has received all of the feedback that was given to us as board members. Is that a true statement?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's online.
Okay, and then I guess my other question is for people who might be listening to this or watching this. It sounds like we've got a lot of people in on this meeting. I'm just wondering if everybody has access to the information that we received to kind of get an idea where, what the comments are and the scope of them and the number of them.
Caroline, is it all posted on the website? Does it all become part of the public record?
The complete packet was posted on the website. The original packet of 100+ pages of public comment was posted with the original information. We've posted supplemental comments up there as they have been received. I would say I have not kept up with my email after about noon today, but otherwise everything is on there. Any late comments that straggled in would be shared to the board, was shared with the board after tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, I think Peter, I'd like to open it up to. I see the first person in the queue may be a holdover. Stuart's hand is still up.
Yeah, there's a Stuart here. The Stuart disappeared and then came back though, so I'm gonna recognize Stuart. Stuart's hand wasn't up originally, so hold on. Let's see if this is Stuart. Oh, I do have a mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
I figured it out. I called in. Sorry, I'm new to the Zoom. You know, I sent an email. I live on the Merrill Road, and I mean, as an understatement, totally opposed to it. And you know, I'm in the kind of building trade, sell building materials, and you know, I asked the question, why live here? Why even live here if we're just going to allow this? I mean, I'll just move now, to be honest, because this is ridiculous. I mean, if we're just going to let this happen to our town with some rich developer come in and basically just destroy the integrity of the whole area. I mean, somebody is going to make a lot of money and leave, but we live here. I've lived here for 33 years. So, you know, I'm just going to say it as an understatement. I'm totally opposed to it. It's, you know, 529 units. I mean, you got to be kidding me. It's, I mean, look, this is a beautiful town. I mean, you look at the ocean, you know, again, 33 years I've lived here, and, you know, the town has changed, but not like this. So I don't know if that's 90 seconds, but we're just regular people. And, you know, if you know, I'm not, you know, I don't have $1 billion where I'd buy it myself and turn it into a park, but that's my suggestion. Let's turn it into another park. I've seen a lot of development in my time, and a couple people are going to get rich and move on and tear up the next place. But anything I can do to oppose it, I will. So, you know, I say it would be a travesty for the area, and if they did it, I'd probably move somewhere that maybe for the next 20 years it'll look like Freeport did. So I'll leave it at that. That's pretty much where I'm coming from. So.
Thank you, Stuart. Mr. Chair, I've got a suggestion. I'm going to try to screen share an online stopwatch here so that everybody can see from home. Is that acceptable to you?
Oh, that's borderline brilliant.
And then we'll let this has never been tried before. It's a Zoom first, but
you saw it here first. Yeah.
People can self-regulate, and then you can speak up if they don't. So, and Stuart was right on with his time there. So, let's see what I can do.
Oh, Peter, you're muted. All right. Let me see here. I've lost the participants panel on my.
Yeah, I can watch. I've got Catherine, Greg, and Sarah, 1, 2, 3 in line here. So Catherine should be over here. If you can turn your microphone on.
I'm on.
You are.
Great. My name is Catherine Walker. I live on Titlebrook Road, which is off of Old County, just around the corner from where this proposed development is being placed. And I'd like to speak to 2 of your points. The phased building aspect of this development seems to be being presented as an attempt to assuage our anxiety about the enormous increase in population. But it is also in turn subjecting us to the 15 or 20 years of constant construction noise and construction traffic and general construction pollution. And that alone regardless of when this is actually finished, changes the character, the very character of our street and our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. All right, so I've got Greg and Sarah next. Greg, Sarah, and then John. Hey, Greg, you're on.
You didn't say you opposed it, but thank you.
I think that was clear.
Hey, Greg, you are live.
Greg, you are still muted, it's showing.
Yep, he's on mute now. I'm not getting any sound though.
Maybe while Greg hopefully figures out his audio, I'll just take a brief moment to note that. Yeah, I just wanted to note that at the end of this, public comment period tonight, I'd like to, give KV Enterprises a couple of minutes to respond to any specific questions or concerns. And then, if the board has other comments, we'll go back to a few minutes of board discussion, just to lay out those sort of ground rules there. Do we have Greg?
We've got him. He's showing microphone live, but we don't have any sound coming. Greg, are we going to probably suggest that people call in or send emails if anybody else has trouble, Mr. Chair? Or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Greg, I'll leave you over here in case you can figure out the microphone situation. It shows right now that you've unmuted yourself, but we're just not getting any sound coming through. So that might be on your computer or phone side. You can call in on the touch tone number or send an email to Caroline. Caroline, can you speak out your email address, spell it out for everybody?
Sure, it's cpellettier@freeportmaine.com. You can also go to the town's website, freeportmaine.com, click on the planning page, and you should have a link to my email right there, if that's easier.
And we've got, I'd suggest using the Q&A, but there's an awful lot of conversation going on down there that I can't keep up with while I'm doing everything else. So sorry about that. Okay, Sarah Victor, then John, then Erin. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone who's here. So first, I would like to say that I'm speaking right now as a long-term resident of Desert Road and as a former member of Freeport's Sustainability Advisory Board for 3 consecutive years, for which I'm very grateful. And I am diametrically opposed to the proposal that is being presented to us for the reasons stated previously by the speakers. And that I would like to also say that a major component missing from this proposal is the value of relationships and interrelationships and community and sustainability, and that this will fundamentally change the character of our town in a direction that is not aligned with our town vision and charter or with the reason that I've settled here with my family. With that, I'll cede the floor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. Got John, Erin, and Amy. 1, 2, 3. Hi, John. You should be live if you can unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted.
You are, yes.
Excellent. My name is John Albright. I live in South Freeport, a little bit away from County Road and Route 1 and the interstate. My biggest concern, I mean, I am opposed to the development of that size. Phasing it in over 20 years or whatever it ended up being, it still makes me uncomfortable because in the end, we've still lost 170 acres of unbroken, woodland. That doesn't include the commercial industrial lot up right on Desert Road. The biggest concern I have is one of process. And I'm not hostile. And in fact, full disclosure, I actually was an environmental consultant about 30 years ago. And I had one contract, I believe, from Sebago Techniques to look for endangered species on a piece of property somewhere in southern Maine. I can't remember. But ordinarily, an entity that has a financial interest that Sebago does in this project wouldn't be the entity that would be leading a conversation with the town of Freeport that with the intent that has the specific intent of enabling a final large project. A tech question to the planning board would be, when is the comprehensive plan due for review? It strikes me that the transition zone concept is really a concept and not something that has been identified as a particular technique, hence the amorphous blue lines. So just Freeport really ought to use this as a wake-up call and recognize that, yes, development is going to happen and we need to be ready for it. But I don't think it's proper, with all due respect, for Sebago Techniques to be the ones leading us in that conversation. We need to do that on our own. And then when you have a proposal that you want to present, bring it to the town and we can address it. I just think that we've got the cart before the horse. And I say that with all due respect. So thank you very kindly.
Thank you, John, for that comment. I think I can speak a little bit, probably not with as much authority as either Peter or Caroline, but we are essentially due for a new comprehensive plan. The pandemic has thrown a bit of a wrench in the spokes of the early stages of that process. It is a long process and one that is probably more easily accomplished with in-person meetings. It will involve a lot of community outreach, a lot of time and a lot of effort, both on the parts of staff and volunteers as well from a lot of different boards and community members. There is a state law, I believe, that says that we have to have a new comprehensive plan every so often. And I don't remember exactly when it's due. Is it 22? Is that right, Caroline?
No, so the state, they consider them expired after 12 years. So our last plan was adopted in 2011. This one would so-called expire in 2023. We do have some funded allocated in the municipal budget to start the updating of the comprehensive plan process. The first step in that process is reaching out to the state of Maine and getting a data package with information for Freeport. They do that twice a year. We did make contact with the state and just received that data package back. Like you said, it'll be a long process. There's a lot of community outreach and involvement, but we are taking steps towards getting that process underway.
Yes, so that is a point well taken. And I think the transition zone, is very much a concept and a sort of a potential that was identified in the 2011 comp plan. And to my knowledge, it hasn't been explicitly used. Like there is no, T1 zone or whatever it would be in town at this point. So yeah, it was proposed, I think, as a means to a potential end. Back to public comment. It looks like we have Aaron up next.
Yep, so we've got Aaron coming over, then Amy and Sam on deck. Hi, Aaron. You should be on.
Okay, I'm muted. Hi, my name is Erin Clough. I live on Murch Road, so in the vicinity of the new development. I've written a lot and spoken a lot about this recently, but I do have a couple of things to add that's hopefully not repetitive. The first is question of why does Freeport need this scale development at all? Is this what we want to grow? This is the type of development that you see in other states, in Massachusetts, and in states in the South and the Midwest, sort of large scale things it's incredibly unusual for Maine. The second, I wanted to speak to the phasing. I want to echo that I don't think that phasing it over 20 years makes me feel any more comfortable with the project. In fact, in some ways, it makes me less comfortable, just in different ways. I think that in some sense, having a phased project over 20 years sells out all of Freeport's future to one developer, and would still irrevocably change the character of the town. And I also agree with John Albright that it is a really poor precedent for us to lock in zoning changes to a giant plan when we need to focus on the comprehensive plan. Our current comprehensive plan is inadequate. It's expiring in 2023, and we should have our focus be on making the comprehensive plan appropriate for Freeport and thinking about what we really want Freeport to look like, not just accepting what Sebago Technics thinks it should look like. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. I've got Amy, and then Sam, and then Jennifer. Hi, Amy.
Hi. Hello, Amy Novak again. Can you guys hear me?
We can, yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm a Dune Drive resident, as you know. I am actually a former construction project manager, having done some very high-scale construction projects in California. I'm pro-building, and I am using land wisely in transitional areas, but I'm against this project. I don't like the way that it's been brought forth, and while it might be unfortunate, I feel like that's no excuse. I also am personally going to speak up for the golf course. My family has enjoyed it, is loving it. I know it's not even close to a PGA level course, but it is such a wonderful sport, a lifelong sport for children, for adults, and to lose a municipal golf course would be such a loss for our community. And I would encourage any developer or the owners of the land, LLB, to look at how else can we use that land, understanding that it's abutted by a railroad, but I think there's a lot more creativity that can be brought to it. I understand master plans, I understand bicycle lanes, but I do not think this this plan is at all comprehensive in the way that our relationship with LL Bean has been. And I would like to bring parties to the table to have a much more creative use of the land and to maintain a public golf course for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right, Sam, then Jennifer, then S. Shea. Hi, Sam. Hi, Sam. We've got your microphone is muted on your end.
Mute.
There
How
you
about
go.
that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. 2010 census showed 3690 housing units. If over 9 years at 8.6% growth, Freeport gained approximately 35 units per year, then between the 144 units in the Hunter Road to Desert Road project and the 529 units in this project, that sounds an awful lot like 19 years worth of growth with nobody else being able to build a garage. Secondly, earlier tonight, we heard the Desert of Maine project as being an upcoming crown jewel for Freeport. Well, let me tell you that the golf course has been a crown jewel for Freeport, and we love it. It's been here since '65. I've been a member since the 80s. This last year during COVID, there were well over 14,000 rounds played. That is on its way to being easily $300,000. To rebuild a golf course is somewhere between $50,000 and $175,000 per hole. So once we lose it, we're not going to get it back. I so oppose this project. I can't begin to tell you. Well, I guess I did just begin to tell you. That's it. Thank you much.
Thanks, Sam. Next up, Amy, and then Jennifer, and oh, Amy's already been on, sorry. Next up is Jennifer, and then S. Shea, and then Sean Hale. Hi, Jennifer. Got you muted, Jennifer. If you can unmute on your end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, perfect. We
Got me?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So I live off Webster Road, and in the interest of time, I really just have a series of questions. I am opposed to this project. I, again, have lived in Freeport my entire life, and I second what was just said about the golf course being a gem in the town of Freeport and something that we should not let go so easily. I would be curious if there's anyone from LL Bean on this call. And I would like to know if this is a done deal. I understand that this purchase is contingent upon approval, and I just want to validate that that is the truth. 529 units is about 20 to 33% increase in population. If, you know, I've heard different figures, but that obviously impacts our taxes, our schools, our roads, our services. Our schools cannot take this. I have 3 children in the school system, and I will tell you that the schools are at capacity. Where else do we have a density of 7 units per acre in town? And I guess that's a question for Caroline. Is this developer the same developer as the Dunstan Crossing development in Scarborough? And then my final question would be, I just don't understand how this is in line with our comprehensive plan. I would recommend that we redo the plan and then we revisit this in 2 years or in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, we've got S. Shea, Sean Hale, and Warren Giroux all next. So, all right.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So I'm Scott Shea. I live on the Desert Road. And I actually grew up in Wiscasset. And I look at a lot of things here very similar. Wiscasset was always talked about being the prettiest village in Maine. And they had no vision for the future. When their Maine Yankee closed down, the zoning, the planning was horrible. And if you go through there now, you can't get that back. You can't get what we had back when people talked about, you know, the Wiscasset being so pretty. And I look at that with Freeport. There's so much positive happening in Freeport. And a lot of it, honestly, has happened because of the variety of things that's offered and the variety of people that come here and live here, the school systems and the quality of education is at a high right now since I've been here. I think, you know, I think it's some of the first time I've seen it ranked in the, you know, the top 10 school or communities in the state. We've got a lot going for us. And, you know, once you have a development like this, you can't take it away. I believe you've already approved a Desert Road development right across the road from this. And we were not even notified about this. We just heard that there was, you know, an article put in the Times Record for that one. And it was very clear with that development approval. Again, LL Bean was behind the sale of that we do not have plans in place really to kind of guide any developer through this. We're allowing, like the other gentleman said, the developers to guide us through the process, which is totally backwards. I also find it really ironic that when I look at LL Bean's website, I had pages of quotes, but only one I wanted to say. It said, you know, land access and preservation has always been one of LL Bean's core values. And obviously it's a philosophy and what Beans has developed, the whole outdoors and preservation, their whole business on. And this is really ironic that LL Beans has acquired all this property in Freeport and now is in the process of selling it for development when they're paying money and supporting places in Cleveland. And again, you can go on the website, they're partnering with other communities to provide more green, open space and less density in developments. And yet in their own town, they're actually supporting development of this sort that would totally change the town and the character forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, next we have Sean Hale, Warren Giroux, Andrew Arsenault. 1, 2, 3. Hey, Sean, yep, you got it.
Hi there, it's actually Sarah Haggerty. Sean's my husband. I did actually submit extensive comments, so I won't reiterate them here in because of time constraints. I did want to actually address the points that some of the members of the planning board brought up, and I wanted to reiterate Sam's point about the rural residential change. We just moved out here a year ago. We lived in downtown for several years, and we wanted to get away from the traffic and away from the noise and away from the busyness. And if this sort of development was clearly on the zoning maps, or somehow it was clear in the comprehensive plan that this was a risk for where we were moving, we would have reconsidered. And so I want to reiterate the points that several people have made, that what we need to do first is reevaluate our comprehensive plan. And then we should be in charge of where our growth happens. Which gets to the question of phasing. It really doesn't help, because what we're doing is bringing high density development into the rural area. And with the 144 units that have already been approved, this really destroys that feeling of rural residential. And I'll also, along those lines, support Catherine's comment that I really don't want to spend the next 20 years with construction, the traffic, the noise. According to the comprehensive plan data, which is very much out of date, this area is one of the areas with the highest accident rates. So it doesn't seem like a great idea to be adding additional development here. And I really think that with the 8 commercial lots, we really need to be focusing on revitalizing our downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, Warren, Andrew, and Nick next. Hi, Warren. You can unmute and go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me, Peter?
You can. Hi.
Hi. Good to see you guys. Just real quick, I wanted to reiterate what others said as far as the character goes. I agree that this mega development doesn't really fit the character of existing residential development in Freeport, regardless of how you phase it or bring it in. I think losing the golf course, as others would say, is tough to swallow. And realistically, if there's going to be some kind of residential development through there, it would be pretty nice to see that the golf course is incorporated with the development. I don't see why that can't be, other than, dollars and cents. The phasing, I agree, is a little bit suspect. Nobody's going to come in here and slam in 500 units of anything in this part of the world. Maybe if we were in California or Denver, they might, but I really question this phasing speak. The other concern I have is I don't believe there's any kind of educational impact fee in the town of Freeport associated with these mega developments, which is a concern. And I have a question for the developer or Sebago. I'm just curious what, like one phase or phase 2 or phase 3, what percentage of growth that represents within the town. I don't think we've really heard a clear answer to that from the development, or what they've, what their math looks like on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've got Andrew, Nick, and Shannon, 1, 2, and 3. Hi, Andrew, you can unmute and go ahead.
You hear me?
You can, yeah, hi.
Yep. Okay, my family owns land fairly close to County Road. And my curiosity was what phase was going to, I see that's phase 1, phase 2. They're talking about the density of the interchange up at exit 20, but really it's going to, the first phase is going to dump out on the old county road, and what impact that's going to have for that neighborhood there at the end of the old county road. And new bridge, is going to have to be a light on Route 1. I was hoping when this got developed that the golf course would be maintained and it would be something more like Ocean View or the Highlands, where it would be a 55+ community. where it wouldn't impact our schools as much and it wouldn't drain our resources. And I think that one of the things we have to do is this would be much better off if this was done not on Zoom, and after this COVID whole pandemic was over and we could actually meet in public and not try to do this on Zoom. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Right, I've got Nick, Shannon, and Sarah, 1, 2, and 3. Hi, Nick, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for having us tonight. I just wanted to kind of piggyback. I've been taking notes all night, and pretty much everything that I was going to say has been said. But I just want to say the first time that I heard about this project, my sister showed me the proposal and I kind of freaked out. And hearing everybody talk tonight has kind of put me at ease a little bit. I almost feel like every name that comes up, I feel like I'm walking through Bow Street and I get to say hi to everybody and talk about this. So I feel pretty safe. And I actually ironically just finished a chapter in a psychology book about Tetlock's theory on exploratory thought. And it states that really when people push themselves to think critically and logically, when they know in advance, they're going to have to explain themselves to external parties who are well informed and genuinely interested in the truth. And I think that Sebago Techniques has kind of brought up the 8.6% growth, the barely touching the blue line, and the 7 units per acre a lot, because they know that they're going to have to explain themselves and why they're trying to develop this in some sort of way that the people of Freeport are going to understand. And I think I just would second everything that everybody said tonight. You know, it would be horrible to get rid of the golf course. I worked there in high school. I golfed there all the time. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for my time. Thank you for my time.
Thanks, Nick. All right, I've got Shannon, Sarah, and Ethel, 1, 2, and 3. Hi, Shannon. You can unmute and go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shannon. You can hear me, I presume.
We can. Hi, Shannon.
Awesome. My name is Shannon Garrity. I live at 25 West Street, and I submitted a letter with a bunch of questions and concerns, and I have a couple additional questions. One is one of the common themes in the letters that many of us sent, and also a letter received by the CEO of LL Bean when he was asked about this, was that there will be affordable housing in this site. And I'm curious, if this was built today, what are the housing prices that would be available in the proposed development? I also challenge the fact that Sebago Technics continues to bring up the density of the overlay for the nursing home. While true, it is a high density, those people are not bringing in kids. They are not driving that much. They are not affecting as much as 529 families would. And I can speak to that because my mother happens to be there. And I have a lot of concerns about what this type of construction will do to the little bit of enjoyment that the folks at Freeport Place and Hawthorne House have with the birds that come by and how much noise and how much traffic. Many of them, what they do is they walk Old County Road with a reflective vest on. And I'm concerned that those people who are now living there for the end of their life will lose all of that for these 529 homes. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Shannon. All right, I've got Sarah, Ethel, and Dale, 1, 2, and 3. Hi, Sarah. You can unmute and go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
You can, yeah.
My name's Sarah Doughton, and I didn't have a chance to write in, but I wanted to just voice my concerns about this and just state that I am beyond opposed to this. I've spent my entire life living on Murch Road. In fact, I live in the same house that I grew up in. And I've been, my husband and I have chosen to raise our daughter here. And I just can't imagine living in a town with a mega development that is being proposed. I can't imagine driving by it several times per day, or seeing it on the from the highway. I just have a lot of the same concerns as Aaron and Jen and Sam. Some of them, I guess, are just like really the question of why does our town need this? Why does our town need this more than any other town? I'm not trying to put it on any other town, but why do we need to have this, or why should we have this? I also have a lot of concerns about how this will impact the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, Ethel next, and then Dale and Deb, 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead, Ethel, you can unmute.
Hi, my name is Ethel Wilkerson. I am the president of the Freeport Conservation Trust, but I want to clarify that my comments tonight are as a citizen of Freeport and not as the president of the Land Trust. The proposal's leading premise is that the site is located within a transitional zone. And this is at odds with the way that I interpret the comprehensive plan. I believe there is a clear misalignment between their proposal and the comprehensive plan. And my question is really one of process, like who decides what the zone is? I know it's a conceptual transition zone, but they're taking the conceptual transition zone and using that as evidence that there needs to be a development in this rural residential zone. And I'm reading it as this is not within the transitional zone. So I think there's just a mismatch of interpretation, and I just don't know who is the authority within the town or the community that can determine what the clarity of that is. Thank you.
Thanks, Ethel. All right, I've got Dale, Deb, and John, next 3. Hi, Dale, you're on.
Yep. My concerns with this project is the financial impact that it could have on the town. And I encourage the planning board to require an impact study. And Sebago Technique said over the next 45 to 60 days, they'll be conducting interviews. But I haven't heard that it's going to really result in an impact study that will quantify the pressures it's going to put on the infrastructure of the town. What I don't want to see is a developer come in and start a development and then the town have to pick up the tab on adding things like sewer, police, fire, schools. I think we ought to know all that before they really start any development. And from my experience working with planning boards, this is something that the developer usually takes on and is required to do before they start the project. So I know I've talked to Caroline about the fees that are involved with a project, and I think with the fees that are charged now were set up for individual homes, not for anything like this. And I also had asked how much had been collected in fees and put in a sinking fund so that when infrastructure needs to be upgraded, that we have the funds to do it. Caroline, I didn't know that that's been answered yet, but I'll contact you tomorrow and see if I can get the answer to that. But my concern is that it's going to cost the town a lot of money to support this if we don't really know what is going to involve and what stresses it's going to put on the infrastructure before it gets started. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. All right, I've got Deb, John, and GM Quattrucci. I'm assuming that's Guy, but I shouldn't assume anything these days. Hi, Deb, you're next. All right, you can unmute whenever you're ready.
Got it. Found the button, thanks.
Excellent. We can hear you.
Okay. I can't even begin to say how adamantly opposed I am to this zoning change being proposed by a for-profit developer that's going to change the rural character of our town in a way that we can never undo should problems arise. We live here because of the rural character of the area. I've been living here for, what, 3.5 decades or something, because of how Freeport is and the rural aspects of it. The thought that Beans, who asks for things from this town by ways of concessions and easements and this and that, is selling what they had originally intended as a wilderness experience to a developer who's looking for a 25 to 30% increase in our town. And no, I am not assuaged by, oh, well, this will be over town. And of course you can build. Other people can build garages if they need to in the meantime. And, oh, well, we'll just decide, we'll sort of build the two sides of the structures that we need. And when we need the facilities, well, if we need more money, then I guess we'll have to develop the different portions of it faster. I mean, if we're really listening, this is just completely unaligned with what the town of Freeport is looking for. So I guess I agree with everybody that's spoken so far. I can't say how much I hate this. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Next up, I've got John, then GM Quattrucci, then Greg. Go ahead, John. You can unmute and go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I guess my first response to this project and seeing it, I think the word dumbfounded came to me. I have not written in to the planning board. We've been living in this town for 16 years. We're raising a son here. We love the size of this town. I can recognize several of the names of people who are calling in, and that's because we still have a small town. I guess when I look at a proposed project on one side of Desert Road that's already sort of happening, I guess, and then this is happening, I guess my big response is, how did we get here? How did this town get to this place? And then, so yes, I guess, I think Stuart sort of, he's passionate, well said, but I would even say understated about his response to this, or what my response to this project would be. There's a cautionary tale in Freeport's history with some projects and big developers. I think if the name Pritham Singh comes to mind, I'm trying to find where he was granted a variance and then beat feet to Florida. But, you know, so this isn't the first time we've been asked to do this. I think there's a precedent here that is terrifying. So, and I'll cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. Guy, is that you? We've got Greg and Matt up next in second and third. GM Quattrucci, there you go.
Am I there? Never did this before. Thank you.
Wow.
I've never been GM before. Thanks.
You've succeeded. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Planners. If the town charter and the comprehensive plan and the land use ordinance are the codified products of citizen participation in setting the guidelines for like the settlement plan of the community that we should all be able to rely on, then what's the point of this applicant or any other from within or outside the community being able to override or overturn the citizens' expressed will? Really?
Well, could I just jump in there for
Yep.
one moment? I just want to clarify. I don't think that's what's happening here. I don't think that we're not at that point in the process, and I just want clarify that.
I hear you, and that public hearing, if that's the way it needs to go, that'll be the way it goes. But I want to get on record verbally. Can I continue?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. I mean, really, a mini town within a town, that's not transition, it's fragmentation. There's plenty of residential property available on town-wide all over Freeport if indeed townspeople identify a severely unmet housing need. I mean, the project proposal, to me, and I don't like to delve into opinion, but this is opinion. I think it's wholly disingenuous and offensive to the concept of citizen community planning. This isn't planning, it's reaction. Scarborough can be Scarborough and Gorham can be Gorham. Nothing wrong with that. Freeport can remain Freeport with reasonable planned and managed citizen-driven planning. We don't need KV Enterprises to do Freeport's de facto planning. Thank you for hearing me. Continue.
Thank you, Guy. Greg, Matt, and David are next. Hi, Greg, you can unmute and go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Greg Gardner. I've born and raised in Brunswick. I lived in Freeport 10 years with my wife and 2 kids. I'm within the 2-mile radius of this project, but irrespective of that, couldn't agree more with all the folks who have spoken tonight. And I have to say, with all due respect to the good folks at Sebago Technics and KV Enterprises, it just strikes me as disingenuous that you're going to come in here and say, well, we want to get a zoning change so that we can put in another 529 lots, high density apartment buildings, a couple hundred townhomes, however many single family lots. There's a reason that I don't live in Somerville, Massachusetts, or Mahwah, New Jersey, or these kind of places. This is precisely why myself and a heck of a lot of other people on the phone choose to live in Freeport, Maine. It's a special place. It always has been. But so as so many people on this phone have said more eloquently than me, it's the very character of this place. It is rural. It's not all stacked up with apartment buildings and things like that. So to come in and say, oh, geez, no, we need to institute a zoning change. Do we though? Who is asking for this? Who in the town of Freeport is suggesting that we don't have enough housing for a third of our population? We need to increase it by a dramatic amount. Who is asking for this in the citizenry of Freeport? And I have to suggest that, look, KV Enterprises stands to very disproportionately benefit from getting this approved. Not the town of Freeport, not the people who have lived here for 30 years, as you've heard on the phone, not those folks. I'm a real estate guy. I get it. You want to come in, put in high density because it's a lot more profitable to do right by 295, 14 minutes from Portland. Boom. That's a ton of money. I get it. I don't want to be a bedroom community of Portland. That is not, I'm like the first guy on the phone, Stuart. I'll move now if that's what you're going to do. That this is not why I want to live here. It seems very disingenuous to me. I want to know where the demand is coming from for the citizens of Freeport. Is that who is asking for this? Because who does this benefit? I will see the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Sam, I'm not sure if that was if there's some misunderstanding about this being an applicant request. I don't want to misinterpret what Greg's saying, but I think we've had a couple questions about this already, about whether this is coming from us or the applicant or where it is that might help. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of why I jumped in over Guy, and I didn't mean to do it to Guy specifically, but I just want to clarify. I think there is a sense that that the planning board and the people at Freeport are being somehow manipulated, if maybe that's the right word, by KV Enterprises and Sebago Technics, and that this is somehow at a different stage of the process than what it is. And so this is the planning process. this is what's happening right now. This is the planning board. And so I guess I would want to push back a little bit against the perception that I'm hearing that, you know, the board is, that, you know, that we're allowing Sebago Technics to do our planning for us. That is not how I see this at all. And so the point that we need a new comprehensive plan is certainly well taken. We are at a delicate point in that cycle, I think, to be considering a potential proposal of this magnitude. And again, potential proposal, there is no proposal which we are currently considering. So that point is well taken, and I certainly hear that. And again, you know, I really appreciate all the people who are coming out to voice their concern. And so far, I think it is exclusively concerned with this project. But I just, yeah, again, just want to get that out there. I do also want to let the rest of the raised hands participate.
Looks like we've got 5 that are there, so we're getting near the bottom. So other people, that'll probably go up to 12. Now that I've said that, everybody will jump on the pile. But we've got Matt, David, and Lynn. 1, 2, and 3. Hi, Matt. You're on. You can. Yep. There you go.
Hi, Peter. Hi, it's Matt Cartmel. I moved to town in 1993 with my wife and raised my family here. We renovated Brewster House Bed and Breakfast at 180 Main Street. Very, very involved with tourism. Hosted many people who came to stay with us who were doing events or buyers for beans. And, you know, it just seems like going back long before we moved to town, the townspeople of Freeport bent over backwards to assist the Bean family in growing their company. And it just amazes me that Chairman Sean Gorman didn't advise his CEO, Steve Smith, to come back to you, Peter Joseph, our town manager, and say, hey, we've got this big chunk of land. Times have changed for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. They own the land. They get to do what they want with it within the zoning, and say, we're going to sell this. The people of Freeport have bent over backwards for us over the last God knows how many decades. Would you guys like to buy this? My sense is that the townspeople of Freeport would be stepping up to acquire this golf course and this land that we see as a phenomenal asset. And it's really disappointing that they did not come to you, Peter, and give us that opportunity. So I'm done.
Thank you, Matt. And I think I've got to rewind and I should answer Matt's question. I can't remember when conversations were started, but I do think that there was conversation about is the town interested in a golf course, you know, running a golf course several years ago. It has not been recent, not part of this discussion, but I don't want to have them make it sound like they're thrown under the bus. I think that they did talk with us a while back about it, but definitely not part of the applicant's part of this application at all. So I don't want to confuse the two issues. Lynn, Danielle, and Sarah are next. Hi, Lynn.
Hi there. Oops, can you shut your volume off? My name's Lynn Shea. I've been a resident of Freeport for about 25 years. I'm also a teacher in the district. I work at Mass Landing School. And one of the big concerns that we had with the Beacon project that is going in down at the end of the Desert Road was the fact that there was no school study done that we could find out about, and what it would do for the number of students would impact the schools. A project of 526 houses or 529 houses would be a huge impact to our schools. And I just want to run some numbers really quick. Obviously, these are not completely accurate numbers, but with a housing development of this size, I would assume that we're looking at an increase of 400 to 500 students in our schools, which would mean an additional 40 to 50 additional students per grade level, which would add an additional 12 classroom teachers at every building, the high school, the middle school, Mass Landing School, and Moore Street School. There would be an additional 12 classroom teachers, when presently we have 14 classroom teachers at Mass Landing School. So with just those numbers, you can see the increase in students and the increase of the population within our schools that our schools can't handle at this point, or I don't even see really in the near future with the buildings that we presently have. So one of the things that I would really, really encourage and hope would happen if something like this were to go through is to look at the schools and look at the capacities that our schools could hold, and see if this is actually something that could be done with our present facilities and staffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. We've got Danielle, Sarah, and David. Or there's two names on here. Hi, Danielle.
Oh, hi.
Somebody else. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Danielle Hansen. The other person on there is Alex Bubia. He's my husband. We live on Tidal Brook Road, which is off of Old County Road, very close to where this development is being proposed. And I did write in, but I do want to make just a couple of quick points that I don't feel like have been mentioned or given quite enough attention. So the first is that we moved here 3 years ago from Portland. We're both Maine residents, lifelong Maine residents. We moved out of a condo in Portland specifically to get away from kind of that congested living. And Freeport was the perfect opportunity for that because of the nature and, everything that everyone else has talked about already tonight. And so I think one thing that has been talked about is the effect of COVID-19 on people's perspective of close contact living. I think there is going to be an effect on that long term, on people's perspectives of that. We certainly have very much appreciated living in a more rural town during this time period. And there has been a max exodus we've seen from close contact living to places like Freeport. And I think we need to consider the fact that that makes us a valuable place and, not put too much stock in something that people might not even want down the road. And then the other point I wanted to make is that I am a runner, and I know that in Freeport, we have a strong biking and running community that use these roads that are already under-servicing us, in my opinion. I have been almost hit by a car running with my dog multiple times on Old County Road. People fly down it and there's no side. So I would just caution what this traffic is going to do to that end of Old County Road. For bikers and runners. And really, that's all I have to add to this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Got Lynn, Sarah, David. Oh, I think Lynn just talked. Is that correct? I don't know if the hand popped back up. Lynn, please, I'm going to lower your hand. If you were back in line again, put your hand back up. I think I might have missed putting your hand down. So I've got Sarah, David, and Susan. And Sarah, go ahead. Yep, there you go.
Hi there. This is Sarah Kelly. I live at 7 Roos Hill Drive. I'm not in the vicinity of this development, and I am opposed for many of the reasons that people have already stated. I'm just imploring the planning board not that you guys have not done enough work, but in the interest of transparency for the community, which is clearly engaged and active in this process. We have almost 700 people on a Facebook group that is organized within the last week, and we had people out at town hall earlier already at this early stage, which I recognize. I would love to be more informed on the process and the exact details that are a little bit unclear, and digging into the Freeport Maine website and everything else, trying to understand the timeline and the requirements and the deliverables. It would be really helpful if the planning board could make this more of a collaborative process within the town that clearly wants to be heard. And it would be wonderful to know a little bit more about the invitation process to be on that master plan that it clearly is in the pipeline to be reviewed, because we have a lot of opinions. And so I would just ask the planning board to include us, to be transparent about the process, and so that we can not focus our energy on jumping the gun, but at the appropriate intersections, bring our questions. The specific questions I have tonight at this stage are: what are the feasibility studies and measures that are required by the developers and the town? A project of this scale clearly needs oversight from the state at certain moments, but also, Freeport is a designated wastewater authority. And so we could understand that, but there's going to be significant impacts to our water table, to our environment, to our traffic, to our schools, to our services. It will bring additional tax revenue. I would love to see so much more depth, and I'm curious if that will be included in the proposal. And if not, what is the process to engage in that kind of in-depth study and inquisition? And can we preemptively request that, and also not put that tax burden on our residents to require us to come up with that information? I don't want to tax the school system. It was brought up at a school board meeting. We can provide information, but let's not make our educators go more above and beyond what they already have done in terms of creativity and effort to provide that. For the quick comment on the golf course, there are creative ways to license golf courses that are publicly owned. There's a town that was quite famous for this in Stockton, California, that turned a tax liability into a surplus for the town's income by licensing this. I'd love to see this kind of creativity that our town has to be applied to a lot of the things going forward that could be included in the master plan. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, I've got David. Hi, David. I think you were on before and might have lost your place, so thank you for being patient.
Well, Peter, thank you. It's David Bennell from Porter's Landing, and with the
Yeah,
name,
hi.
you never know who you're going to get called on. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, friends on the planning board. Again, David Bennell from Porter's Landing, a member of the Active Living Committee. Also moved here 25 years ago for LL Bean, so full disclosure, I believe I've been the only person to ever hold the position of environmental manager at the company. But I'm talking to you as a shareholder in a almost as old a company in the Midwest that's in the golf course business. Must be serendipity, Sarah, that I've followed you, because I would suggest to our friends on the planning board, there's a really different way to approach this whole concept, and to our friends at LL Bean and management and ownership, if you're listening. And that is looking at a completely different way to match sort of LL Bean's mission, being an outsider, $1 million commitment to the Trust for Public Land, to exit from the property they own as a golf course, which they deserve to do and have every right to do, and receive a monetary reward for that, but do it in a way that better honors their commitment to stakeholders. The company, I believe, still does operate with a stakeholder philosophy. And I just think this is the nicest thing I can say about it is probably lazy. There is a way to get an exit out of this for the company that better benefits the community, that gives the family and the leadership of the company its well-deserved reward. And my family company is a good example of that. We were able to sell a golf course in my hometown in Ohio, conserve over 3/4 of it forever in conservation, and exit profitably with a really thoughtful approach with the surrounding community. So Peter, I would say again to you and the planning board, specifically Sam and others, I would give this another look. There's a way to do this where I think more needs can be met in a more thoughtful, longer term way than probably is being considered to date. Back to you, Peter, and thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, David. I've got Susan next, and then Andy. Hi, Andy. We've got Stuart. I'm not sure if this is Stuart from the beginning of the meeting or not. And then we've got Lauren. So we've got 4 people lined up here. Sam, I don't know if you have a preference on repeats so that you can think about that. We've still got a minute here. Hi, Susan.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Hi.
Okay, great. My name is Susan Dunning, and I live on Route 1 on the way to Brunswick, so not near this project. But actually, first of all, I wanted to say thank you to the planning board for taking the time to hear from all of us tonight. We very much appreciate your time. And I wanted to add that I did not write in with my opposition, and I did not prepare to speak tonight, so I apologize that I'm speaking somewhat off the cuff, but I felt obligated as I was listening to other people talk tonight just to register my strong opposition to this project. Like so many people who have spoken tonight, it just does not seem like the kind of development that Freeport is looking for and frankly can support. My family, I've lived in Maine or in Freeport for most of my life, and my family has been here for several generations. Like someone else on the call, I live in my childhood home, which was also my dad's childhood home. So we've been here for a good long time, and I care deeply about this community. And I just feel like this project does not suit Freeport. It doesn't feel thoughtful. It doesn't feel like it will achieve the objectives that we want to achieve in terms of development and providing the kind of housing that we want to provide to be a welcoming and diverse community. So I just wanted to register my opposition and go on record with that. So that's it.
Thank you, Susan. All right, Mr. Andy Welland, you are up. You can hit unmute and go ahead. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. So my name is Andy Welland, 83 Hunter Road. I used to be a town councilor, and I feel really strongly that this project should be rejected out of hand as quickly as possible and not waste anyone's time anymore. It's an incredible insult that LL Bean would even be sponsoring this proposal in terms of it affecting the rural residential area. You know, it's one thing to try to promote density housing, but to this scale, 30% population, all the issues people brought up, it's just, you know, overwhelming the school system and ruining the rural residential feel. It seems like the momentum you're going to have against this from LL Bean point of view is going to be 10 times as intense as the momentum we developed with the Seacoast project when, you know, business interests, et cetera, try to ruin the rural residential feel. It's sad. It's disgusting. And, you know, there's a lot of good organizers in Freeport, and LL Bean doing this is just a slap in the face. A lot of people cut LL Bean a lot of slack because they employ a lot of people. I don't care if they leave the town over this. This is huge, man. This is really huge. And, you know, whatever people decide, creative solutions, that's fine. But we just have to say no to this now. Like I'd like the zoning board to just say no to it as soon as possible. And I just want to register my deep concern. And I'll be talking to LL Bean executives. I'll be calling all the counselors. And I've also heard Donna Larson works for Sebago Technique, and you know, when she worked for the town, she seemed to care about the rural residential, but I'm concerned that she's sold out to the corporations. And you know, look, everyone wants to make a profit, but LL Bean is not a public thing, so they're not beholden to stockholders, so they can make decisions that's for the community good somewhat, you know, so they need to do that. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Take care.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I've got Stuart and Lauren, 2 people left. Sam, is that okay to bring Stuart back?
Yeah, I think that's worth seeing if these are still new comments. Yeah.
Hey,
Hi,
Stuart.
can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Hi, I've already spoken, so I'm going to keep it really short. You know, obviously everyone who's called is very strongly opposed. So I would like to find a way to organize this group of people. I don't know where to begin. I feel like I'm going to call Alpha Wilkinson at the Freeport Conservation Trust as a starting point. I have no idea. I'm going to call Elo Bean. I'm going to do all that. I'm willing to donate resources, time, money to oppose this. And I say the people on this call should get organized and have our own meeting. And rather than be individuals, we just get together, figure out a way to put a stop to this, or at least find a conservation, whether it's the golf course or some type of park setting. And, you know, I'm willing to put up time and money to prevent it. So that's what I say. Let's get organized and not just be individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Okay, I've got Laura next, and then Joyce, and then John.
Hi, it's John Manganello actually again. So I just, in full disclosure, I'm also a board member of the Maine Coast Waldorf School. My comments right now are as a resident. I live on Dune Drive. So just two things, both of which I don't think have been mentioned. So I'm not going to try to be repetitive here. A lot has been said, and I agree with everything that has been said. I grew up in Cumberland. I chose to move to Freeport because of the Waldorf School. But I think more importantly, I grew up on Valhalla Road, right next to the Cumberland Public Golf Course, and can certainly appreciate and live through the benefits of a thriving public golf course. So, you know, if this move forwards, I'd encourage the town to try to go seek out if there has ever been a town that has consciously made a decision to get rid of a golf course instead of reinvesting in it. That's point one. Point two, which is actually the larger reason that I rose my hand here, is we recently read in the Portland Press Herald that the DOT has reached out to the town and given us an incredible tight timeline. My biggest concern with all of this is around safety. So an incredible tight timeline to make a choice about what that bridge crossing at exit 20 will look like. One is less expensive, one is more expensive. The more expensive option allows for biking and walking lanes, which I personally think should be extended all the way down to the desert of Maine. And we've heard how that's going to be a future crown jewel for this town, and so we should think about that. However, if a decision is not made in the next 2 months, and it sounds like that's the deadline that the DOT has given the town of Freeport about the specs on that bridge, if we do not go with the more expensive, more robust option, there's no possible way, especially with the 144 unit development that's already going in at a DOT graded F intersection, that we could support this. So the town better figure out a way to go with the more expensive option of that bridge crossing and those exits if they were to consider this. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, John. I've got Joyce and John. So that's two people on deck. That's a call to anybody else that wants to participate. Now is probably the time to get your hands up and get in the queue. Hi, Joyce.
Hello again. I did send in a letter, but in addition to agreeing with what has been said already, you know, our town has strived for many, many generations to maintain its character and the rural nature. Just ask McDonald's. We made sure that they maintained their character by using an old home instead of being able to build one of their drive-through. A project like this just feels like it'll take us down the road of cookie cutter communities that we see, and I've seen throughout my life in multiple states, multiple large cities and towns that are outside of rather large cities. And we will not be able to turn the clock back on that. I think the golf course is a very important part of our active living community, which we have talked about and made strides to increase over the last 10 years. It would be a real shame to see that go. And I think any project of this nature should be tabled until the comprehensive plan is updated. Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce. I've got John, Lisa, Catherine, and Jane in that order. Hi, John. You can unmute and go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. John Gorin, living at 74 Webster Road. We moved here about 20 years ago, and needless to say, we are in a butter to what potentially could be the expansive event that we're looking at here. This property could expand right up to our backyard on Webster Road, eventually down the line. Not something that we moved here to see in our lifetime, and not something we'd like to see. A couple of years ago, a developer came along and wanted to purchase the farm across the road from us and put in condos out here in the backside of Freeport on a beautiful set of horse farms. And that did not work very well. It did not go over very well with the residents here on Webster Road. I can well imagine that my neighbors and myself and my wife are not too thrilled with the idea of a very large investment going on in the land directly behind our homes. So something to think about. Can't understand why the town of Freeport would like to have such a large development on this side of 295. When we moved in here back in 2000, 2001, there was a large fight over this side of 295, and the residents won. I'd hate to see that happen again. That's about it. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thanks, John. Okay, I've got Lisa, Catherine, Jane up next. Sorry, three people, Lisa, Catherine, and Jane. Not Lisa, Catherine, Jane. Hi, Lisa. You can unmute and go ahead. Oh. You can't, can you? Hold on. This is odd, Mr. Chair. I'm allowing to talk, but not let me. Nope. Lisa disappeared from the top of the list.
Hopefully, Lisa, if you're still there, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, she might have. Maybe she was logging off and she was no longer there. That's why I couldn't. Lisa, if you're still there, feel free to put the hand up, and you'll be right at the back of the two people here. Catherine, you're up. You can unmute.
Hi, you can hear me?
We can.
Great. So I'll be brief. I did not submit any comments, but we heard a lot.
Could you please identify yourself just for the record?
Kathy Bieberstein. Sorry, I live out on Flying Point on Byram Avenue.
Thanks.
Hey, so I just wanted to say I heard a lot of good comments tonight. They all went in the same direction. I think the good news, because there's a lot of tension, maybe it's just this last 24 hours, is that we get to decide in Freeport what the zoning will be for this parcel of land. We're in control of our own fates. So just like David Bunnell said, it's created an opportunity for us to think about the importance of this parcel of land to the town, of its uses of golf course, of preservation of open space. It's focused our attention on the need to develop a revised comprehensive plan for the town. And with that, we've heard people to say tonight, to talk about open spaces, bike lanes, hiking trails, recreational uses writ large. And it's led us to talk about the need to implement a plan to make the downtown a living, breathing space with focus on residential opportunities. So I think this is not, I view this as an opportunity for conversation. I know people are concerned that's a done deal. I think the level of engagement you saw tonight makes it very clear that that's not the case. So thank you for putting this out to all of us. I think these are the questions we have to ask ourselves, not just ask them, answer them, and then implement the solutions in the coming years.
Peter, you are muted.
I should probably say thank you, Kathy. I'm going to try Lisa first because we lost her there for a minute. Hi, Lisa. Lisa is showing with the microphone just unmuted, but just no sound.
Maybe we'll give Jane
Let's
a
go to
chance
Jane.
and
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
leave-
hope for a reconnection there.
We'll leave you in the talking column. If you can get your sound working, we'd love to hear from you. Hi, Jane.
Hi, this is Jane Yurko. I live on the Merrill Road, which is just a couple of tenths of a mile off the Desert Road. In full disclosure, I work for LL Bean, but not, I didn't even know about this until I saw the Portland Press Herald article, which makes me have a side comment. Really, putting your information on the Times Record is not helpful for anyone who lives in Freeport. It's a Portland paper and no one looks at the legal section of the Times Record to find out information about our town. It would be better to have something in the Portland Press Herald or some other way of communicating as well. But that wasn't what I really wanted to comment on. I used to, when I worked in town at LL Bean, I used to walk back and forth to work. So I would walk down the Desert Road every day, both directions. And I've noticed that that land already has homes in it. It doesn't need new ones. I've seen silver fox coming out of that land crossing the Desert Road. I've seen turkey and I've seen deer and I've seen, I think I sent a picture to Carolyn Pelletier, a picture of a white lady slipper. And I walk along the trails on that property, and there's protected rare fauna and flora, and it doesn't need it. Environmental impacts need to be looked at before they start building there. That's one thing. And then the other thing my husband said that I want to share, we have 1.5 acres here in the rural zone. And what would it look like? What would you think if we tore this one house down and put 10 houses on this property? Would you approve that? That's a question. Just a question. I cede my time. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. Still got Lisa here showing with the micro. Lisa, can we hear you? Feel bad with the last person with the hand up to not be able to recognize them. Yeah, Lisa, I'm seeing you turn the mute on and off. It shows that when you've got the software has you muted, but when you turn it back on, there's no sound coming out. I don't know if your computer has a microphone or not, or your phone or the device you're using. You can try, we've got a couple minutes left, but I don't know if it'll work. You can try calling in on the call-in number, or you can email Caroline maybe. Do you have any other suggestions, Sam or Caroline? We've run into this problem once or twice at the town council with bigger meetings that sometimes the mic doesn't work, which is unfortunate.
You mentioned we had a couple minutes left, Peter. Is Zoom going to kick us off?
No. I just
no. Okay.
Unless you were planning on ending the meeting immediately, I figured we might have a couple more people raise hands. I should leave that up to you, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. As it is getting late. I'm sure everybody has other things to do and think about. But yeah, we would certainly encourage Lisa to explore one of those other ways of having your voice heard, added to the record here. Just to clear up something about the Times record, I think that, and Peter or Caroline, maybe you're better positioned to correct me on this, but I don't think it was, that was a piece of reporting. That was, the information that ended up in the Times record and then, was on the Press Herald's website. That was a piece of journalism, because all of the planning board meetings are public meetings. And the first time that the planning board heard from KV Enterprises and Sebago Technics, they brought this to the board in a public meeting, informal, not a proposal, just to ask questions of the board, say, hey, what do you guys think about this? There was a lot of information. Honestly, I don't think we really had that much to say about it. One of the things that we said in that meeting was that we wanted to hear from the public. So, that was the Times record was not, I don't think that article was not the result of somebody intending to get information out to the public. That was journalism. Does that seem accurate, Peter?
I don't know. I have to ask Caroline. I'm not sure where your legal ads went for the.
Yeah, I think what the public's referring to is the town of Freeport historically has posted required legal ads in the Brunswick Times record. That's town practice. We have heard at the project review level, and as the planning board's discussed, that the public would like to see those other places, which is a discussion that we've had. As far as this meeting, we haven't had a legal hearing, so we haven't posted anything in the paper, but I believe that's what the public is referring to, the preference to see the town use at minimum, the Press Herald over the record.
Right, and it is, as you noted, it is something that the board has discussed recently, is updating the notification system to better serve people who need to be notified. So let's see, I do see another hand. Maybe we'll hear from Liz, and then maybe call it a night on public comment, assuming no other hands come up while she's speaking.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I just want to say really quickly that one of many people who we live in Freeport because it's rural. We live here because it's got beautiful trees, it has trails, and we moved all the way out from San Diego for this. And I just want to go on record as another person saying, please just don't turn this into just like another, suburb like so many other cities. This is a very beautiful, special place, and this dense housing is absolutely going to ruin it. So please, just like somebody else said, don't waste any more time with this. Let's just say, no, nobody supports this. Let's just not waste any more time with it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Liz. I think at that point, we'll probably close the public comment. It's not an official public hearing, but we will call it a night for public input. Again, we really appreciate all of you who have come out here to voice your concerns with this project. I think this is how the process works. So I guess my preference now would be to go to KV Enterprises for a couple minutes. We'll give you more than 90 seconds, just because what I see, at least 4 of you sitting around the table there. So just a couple of minutes to respond, and then we'll go back to the board.
All right. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
All right. We wanted to say thank you. We were just discussing one of the benefits of Zoom is that we can have this time to have these conversations and also acknowledge the value of what we're hearing. I think there's a lot of questions in here and a lot of concerns that we can answer. I think the easiest ones for me to answer right now would simply be the intention to engage with the community, certainly around the fiscal impact study. We did mention that when we came the first time that was underway. We do have just some summary findings And while we could share them, I don't really think this is the right time. It does, so the news would be that it shows a net positive, both in revenue generation assessed value with impacts that are below the revenue generation that could be covered by a project like this. And we'll be happy to share those when we come back to you, because I think that's a more appropriate time that we can really dig into them and discuss them. Through that process, they did meet with the schools and public safety, as well as infrastructure areas, to understand the impacts so that they could measure the cost. They have done a population calculation with this based on a spread of density. They've calculated what the impacts to the school would be in terms of new students, and what those offsets might be in terms of the fiscal generation for this. So we do have that information. We want to share it. The final report is still being wrapped up. As I said, we just have the summary findings, and we will share that document. I think the other question was related to the golf course and the character, and I absolutely understand and note the value of the golf course. It was an item of discussion. We did look at many different solutions to try and keep it intact. And that was a challenge in this plan. I think what's really important in this is that that golf course will be changed regardless of this development or any other. It is something that that is looking to be closed and sold simply because the operation is no longer of interest for the owner at this time. And then, or at least as I understand it, and I do understand the character. I think the sight lines and the discussion, I think that's something that can get built into language. It's something that we can work with and understand what that looks like. And I think in terms of the cookie cutter or discussions in that way, I think that's built into a zone in the character of the buildings, the fenestration, and the intention of how they're going to be set. So I think there's a lot of power there for the community and for this board to create in those areas. In terms of amenities and circulation, I think one stood out for County Road. It is an area of the study. It will have the same equal focus that Desert Road will in terms of traffic and impact studies. And I wish, there's so much in here I'd highlighted. I don't think we're trying to lead the zoning process. I appreciate you stepping in and clarifying that. We are certainly open to guidance from this planning board and from the staff on where they think this should go. And I do think it's reasonable to point out that Freeport will continue to experience growth. And the question really is, where do you want to focus that growth? If not here, where? And I don't think it is the intention to just let that happen and continue to sprawl into your rural areas. And so focusing that growth will be important. It's not, doesn't mean somebody can't build a garage. That's not the growth we're talking about. But it does mean that maybe you focus where new residential homes are developed. And I think there certainly is a component of affordable housing in it. I do think there's a lot of different sustainable options that we can incorporate into a development like this. So all of this feedback leaves me very hopeful. I understand opposition and not wanting it. And so we'll continue to try and be sensitive to that. And with that, I think we'd like to invite the board. We'd like to continue this process, and we're hopeful that you are interested in continuing this conversation to discuss this process further.
All right, thanks to Sebago Technics and KV Enterprises. Caroline?
Yeah, sure. I just want to clarify something. I can see we're starting to lose some people from the public. It's getting late. I just want to clarify that under Section 203 of the Freeport zoning ordinance, there's different ways that amendments can come forward. So they can come forward from the planning board, they can come forward from the project review board or the council. Those would be amendments that would come forward as a result of our ongoing planning process. But a property owner or somebody with right title or interest also has the ability to bring an application forward. They can initiate that process, which is what we have here today. So we're not letting them drive the planning process, but they have the right to bring an application forward the board has to consider the application brought forward by the applicant. And the important role of the planning board in this process is not only the public process and the public hearing but to weigh in and give a recommendation to council as to whether or not this is consistent with the current Freeport comprehensive plan. Again, which should reflect the values of the community. I think, the community of Freeport as a whole and the board, I would say, for the most part, people are saying they want to update the comp plan. So, we take those comments, and I think a lot of us are on the same page, which is really nice to hear as a community and would be done as a separate process from this application. Does that provide any clarity to everybody?
If I may, I was going to make the same point about the applicant having the right to bring this forward. But let me also say that everybody should realize that the planning board has not done a single thing to advance or endorse this proposal at this point. This is just a first discussion, and the applicant, as Caroline said, has the right to bring it here. So the planning board is not discussing this privately with the applicant. We don't discuss it privately with each other. This is what you see here is all that's happened so far.
All on the public record, for better and for worse. So, I think, my guess is that KV Enterprises would appreciate hearing some thoughts from the board on the potential paths forward and our view of what those paths may or may not be in light of the public comment and our own thoughts and the current comprehensive plan and all that. And one sort of, and I'm speaking for myself here personally, I'm certainly sensitive to the feeling that we should update the comprehensive plan before we do something of this magnitude. But I also just want to recognize that if we wait until the comprehensive plan is updated, it's pretty easy to fall into a cycle of, well, we always have to wait until the next iteration, or we always have to. So the process is going to involve, assuming this process goes forward in some fashion, it's going to involve a lot of public comment, a lot of opportunities for public comment. And so, I also think that the current comprehensive plan has been accused in the past of being open to interpretation, as of course anything is. But I think there are ways to work within the current comprehensive plan and also taking into account the feelings of the town. And so I don't think that should be what holds us up from, allowing KV Enterprises to, pursue an application if they feel that it's, in their interest to do that. That is something that if they have right title and interest to the land, then they are entitled to do that, and we will listen. So. Other thoughts from the board? I guess I'll continue on rambling on here then. Just briefly, I do see that the path forward as being a pretty narrow one with this proposal, and this is me speaking personally, not for the board, but I think given the overwhelming public opposition to where this potential proposal stands now, I would see that it would need very substantial revisions to gain the support gain my support, I should say. And I think I see this as being very different from the Beacon development that was approved across the street. For a lot of reasons, to me, that was a different, it's a different piece of land. It's in a different, even though it's geographically close to part of this development, it's between, the two transportation facilities. It's not visible. So it doesn't have, as much of a visible impact on the character of the town, people driving through. And I think it also, for being an even higher density and even closer to town, does better serve some of the goals that are set out in the comprehensive plan. So I do, I was supportive of that, and I continue. I would support it again if it came, if it came before the board again. I do feel that this proposal, or potential proposal, I should say, is quite different in magnitude and also in character. So I would, for me personally, as it stands now, I would have trouble, trouble getting behind it.
I'll just, I'd like to say that, I just think, I know we've talked about this in the past. I think it's just really important that, and we make it a priority to update the comprehensive plan. I mean, our job is, what's before us now is to see if this potential change is in line with the plan, but it's a 10-year-old plan, and it's the driver of a lot of the direction that we want to go. And so it's just, in my mind, it's really difficult to make an educated decision if this is in line with an outdated plan. And I really, it's just really hard for me to wrap my head around that.
I would just say there's a difference between the plan expiring because the time elapsed versus actual changes in goals and values. And if this plan, continues to represent, as far as we could tell, the current values of Freeport residents and the same goals we have today, the plan is still a valid guide. And I'm all for a new plan when it's due, but that doesn't necessarily govern any particular proposal, because going by this plan is fine if we don't feel there's been any change in our goals and values.
No, that's understandable, but in the last 9 years, its growth has increased 9%. That's significant.
Yeah, I guess I see the comprehensive plan is pretty open to interpretation. There's a lot of different readings in there. If you dig in, you can pretty much find a way to mold it to support all kinds of different development. I could see arguments for this development being consistent with parts of the comprehensive plan and inconsistent with other parts of it. I certainly agree, Robert, that the plan desperately needs an update. I think that that's as much to clarify what the actual goals and intents of the town are, as much as it is to meet any sort of requirement and expiration date. I also, the pandemic hasn't done any favors to the comprehensive plan updating process either. So we may be stuck with it for, right up until the deadline, or hopefully not beyond, but there's a lot of factors that are going to impact that. Anna?
It's just been a big learning process for me, hearing from this many folks in our community. And one thing that really stuck out to me from the written comments and then from the public comments is that they're very opposed to rural development, but they're not opposed to development happening downtown, as we've talked about. But also, someone mentioned, I don't know if anyone else saw in the Q&A, about development happening out on Route 1, which we've talked about before as the planning board of it's kind of a weird section of town, and something needs to happen there. So I think that's just interesting and good to note. And, it seems like there might not be land for sale there that could support the type of development that Sebago Technics is proposing, but something to think about moving forward.
I'm looking through, Anna reminded me of looking through the comments here and the questions and answers. And I heard somebody said that we just heard several people give feedback that this project is not a match for the comprehensive plan. And I guess my point is that argument is very valid. There are many readings that would say, yes, this project is not a match for the comprehensive plan. And yet there are parts of the comprehensive plan that I could see, finding a way to say that yes, there are parts of the comprehensive plan that would certainly allow a development like this. So I guess my intention with that comment was not to, ignore the feedback that people feel that this is not a match, but simply to call attention to the fact that the plan has many readings. Other thoughts from the board?
Hey, Sam, I don't have a lot of new things to add. I think the public participation and engagement is great. What I heard tonight was a lot of aversion to just plain growth in our community, not really specific to this site, but just the sheer scale here is alarming to our community of 8,000 people. So I think there's some real obstacles. One, how are the town's resources, limited resources, going to be a match for something of this scale? We've got a problem intersection at Desert Road, and a pending bridge project, and another very large project that hasn't even been absorbed yet across the street. But again, specific to this site and in the spirit of a workshop and a discussion, there might be some opportunity for the town to maybe address some affordable housing needs. The site is, I keep coming back to, it's in between a railroad bed, a warehouse, and the highway. Change is difficult, but if we're going to deal with change, which is coming, unless we put walls up around the borders of Freeport, it's something that maybe we need to take the opportunity to seize and participate in that growth and control it a little bit. So I think that's really what we're discussing tonight. But it's a big project. I think we're all still shell-shocked on a second round of discussions.
Yeah, I think that, the point is well taken on affordable housing. And that's the part of it to me that is very much consistent with the comprehensive plan. There are specific paragraphs in the comp plan, and I won't waste your time by digging it out of my pile of papers over here. But I think it's, that aspect where we have, I think a lot of people agree that the housing prices in town are high. They are difficult for a lot of people to afford. And I think there is a need for more affordable housing in town. What it looks like, sure, there are lots of different ways to imagine that. But I think, there are opportunities here, and I would love to see more more affordable housing built in town. And I think, for me, I keep coming back to the rural residential part of it is an important part. I guess I would really have a hard time getting behind a proposal that rezones rural residential. I think the industrial section, there may be some opportunities in that part of this parcel that may be more appropriate for development on a scale that is more fitting with Freeport as it is today. But I certainly also, agree with Aaron's point that I think there's an opportunity here to guide the development of Freeport. That we've seen a lot of growth in the real estate market in this part of the world or this part of the country, in this community. And I work in construction, and the phone rings off the hook. I don't usually have to answer it, fortunately, but it's there's a lot of growth, and I think it is things will change over the coming years. So,
and I think we heard that even this applicant might be interested in discussions about relocating the project to other parts of the town. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of further discussion, even if this particular project doesn't go forward because of all the opposition, both in the public and maybe on the board itself. So, we should keep, we could keep talking. I do have one specific question for KV, if I may. One very discrete thing is the golf course. A lot of people are expressing a lot of concern about the golf course. So if this did somehow move forward in some form, did I hear you say that the golf course was not salvageable, that's going no matter what?
I'll take that. Right? Okay. Yeah, well, we have looked at trying to salvage the golf course. I mean, I think that it could be saved if the town wishes to have it. I mean, there's been a lot of really great comments tonight from wonderful people that care about your town, and many of them moved there recently, and many of them lived there a long time, and it's very, very desirable community that you have, and we want to add to that. We could work around the golf course. However, much of the golf course is some of the more developable land. a lot of the land outside of the golf course area is less developable in that there's a lot of slopes, a lot of rough terrain, swales, and so forth. So it is the better part of the property to develop. However, listening to the community, we want to develop a plan that works for the town. We recognize you will have 400 to 500 homes built in your town over the next 10 or 15 years, whether we come there or not. We were hoping to create a community, an area of the community that is planned well, that suits the needs of the community, that can leave open trails and, cross-country skiing and all those amenities that, you're all used to. We don't want to take those things away. We just want to plan a great area that makes sense for the town to fulfill some of the needs of future homeowners that are going to move there anyway. We really think that Freeport is beautiful. Of course, so does everyone that lives there. So does everyone that wants to live there, whether they come from San Diego or they come from Portland. Everybody wants to go to Freeport because it's just such a handy, beautiful place. So if you would allow us to continue forward and work with the town and the citizens and develop a plan and see if we can save it. But we wish to put an affordable housing element into the plan to some degree. We wish, but we can't get there without the density. If we could get affordable housing, we get recreational, we get trails, we get snowshoeing, skiing, all on town property rather than LL Bean property, we expect to donate that property to the town for those uses. Those are some of the amenities that they'll still have. Now, the questions and the concerns are real. They're huge, great comments. We need those. We need to hear from the people so we can design a neighborhood that doesn't do some of the things that they're afraid of. But let us get our study done and let us continue on with you and try to show you what the real results of the studies are. We're paying a lot of great professional people to determine all the real numbers. We'll love to share them with you and hopefully continue forward and discuss all the possibilities. So thank you.
Other thoughts from the board, or are we all tuckered out this evening? All right, I think I know what that means. I do just want to reiterate one more time that we greatly appreciate all the input from the public tonight. I think it's great to see so many people come out and be part of the civic process a day after another great civic process, and a little worn out from the first one. So appreciate the effort here. Thanks to Peter for running the meeting. It's a great honor. And unless anybody has final closing comments, Peter?
I just want to say we had almost 150 people on this call earlier today, between audience and participants, and that's probably more people than we've had in a meeting since, we've had annual town meetings here 30, 40, 50 years ago now. So congrats to the board. Thank you. And thanks to the public.
All that on the internet. So, yeah.
Thanks to everyone. It's awesome. And you guys as the board.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, Robert?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Anna?
Yep.
And I also vote yes. Look forward to seeing you all next time. And until then, take care.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline, do you have the recording stopped on your machine before I hit the end button and ruin it all? You're muted.
Yep, I just hit end recording, so now I should be able to leave.
You leave, call me, make sure the recording starts downloading before I hit the stop button on here.
Okay, so I'll leave and then,
Because I've never had somebody record not being the one running the meeting, so let's make sure that works.
okay.
Yeah.